Chapter 1740. 2 short hours quickly passed. The cultivators of the 3 realms finished resting and reorganizing. Under the lead of the 5 Yu Yao, they set off for the island. At the center of Baiyue Island, over 1,000 cultivators were gathered in a panicked and uneasy manner. Before today, even though they had many experiences fighting with others, none of them had experienced a battle like this. The 3-realm island had arrived with a ferocious momentum. They had broken through the island's grand protective formation that had been maintained for 800 years and killed 800 Baiyue cultivators. Even a few Yu Yao had died in battle. All of this had happened in less than half a day. In this half a day, the entire Baiyue Island had been turned upside down. No one could understand why this was the result. On the surface, Baiyue Island undoubtedly held the absolute advantage. They had the same number of Yu Yao, while Baiyue Island had a total of 2,000 Yu Yao. Moreover, they were the defending side. Under normal circumstances, it would be impossible for the defending side to achieve such a great result if they didn't have at least 3 times the number of Yu Yao. However, the 3-realm island had achieved this with only 1,000 cultivators. Moreover, the 3-realm island had suffered almost no losses in this battle. The Baiyue cultivators were terrified. Even though they still had over 1,000 cultivators gathered here and the many formations in the central region were still operating, they still didn't feel safe. If the island's grand protective formation was broken, they could still retreat to this place. However, if the central region was lost as well, where could they retreat to? Although the myriad phenomenon sea was vast, there was probably no place for them to hide. Most importantly, Yu Yao, who was the cornerstone of the group, only had 2 members left, Yu Huan and Jianghu, and were naturally aware of the state of mind of their own constellations. At this moment, Jianghu was trying his best to boost morale and rally the cultivators to live and die with Baiyue Island. As for how effective it would be, he could only do his best and leave it to fate. As for Yu Huan, he was using a musical talisman to communicate with someone. His expression was constantly changing. He truly couldn't understand why the 3-realm island had dared to attack Baiyue Island like this and even succeeded. Thinking back, the root of all this was that they had been broken through from the inside. Chu Zhu, who had returned earlier, was definitely the enemy Yu Yao in disguise. However, he hadn't been able to see through her disguise. As a result, Baiyue Island didn't have the slightest initiative in this battle. It was impossible for him to give up Baiyue Island. Back then, the galaxy had spent a great deal of effort to occupy such a high-class spiritual island on the Wanxiang Sea. Over the years, it had brought a lot of benefits to the galaxy. It had been peaceful for 800 years. If he lost it when it was his turn to take charge of this place, how would he explain it to the cultivators of the galaxy? Thus, they could only defend and hope that 3-World Island would retreat. Even if they had to pay a price, Yu Huan was willing to accept it. He could sense with his divine sense that the cultivators of the 3 realms were rapidly approaching. Clearly, they didn't want to leave the matter at that. 300 kilometers, 200 kilometers, 100 kilometers. As the cultivators of the 3 dimensions approached, the atmosphere on Baiyue Island seemed to become murderous. Amidst this tense atmosphere, a brilliant aura suddenly shot over from the distance. It charged into Baiyue Island and appeared between the cultivators of the 3 realms and Baiyue Island. At the center of the island, Yu Huan relaxed when he saw this person appear. He had finally managed to invite this person over. In order to invite this person, he had promised many benefits. As for what the final result would be, he didn't know. He could only hope that things would develop in a positive direction. Following this person's appearance, the cultivators of the 3 realms couldn't help but stop advancing. At the front of the crowd, Lu Yi stood on a tiger-shark warship. When he looked up, he discovered that this person was a middle-aged man with a kind face. He was definitely a peak Yu Yao cultivator. This person had appeared out of nowhere and had suddenly appeared between the 2 sides. This was extremely strange. Lu Yi couldn't figure out this person's intentions. He couldn't help but wonder if this person was Baiyue Island's reserve Yu Yao. If that was the case, then this person was truly courting death by appearing so boldly in such a position. At this distance, if 5 Yu-Yao attacked together, even if this person really was a peak Yu-Yao cultivator, he definitely wouldn't have an easy time. He turned to look at Luan Xiao. The latter shook her head, indicating that she didn't know either. Just as Lu Yi was pondering, the person smiled and nodded. He said loudly, "Fellow cultivators of the Three Realms Island, sorry to disturb you. I am Yellow Dragon Gu Chuan." Lu Yi frowned slightly. Yellow Dragon, these two words were famous throughout the entire starry sky. Yellow Dragon Realm was one of the top realms in the galaxy. It had a lot of sunshine and a lot of resources. It was much more profound than the Myriad Phenomenon Galaxy. As a top realm, Yellow Dragon Realm even occupied a top spiritual island on the Myriad Phenomenon Sea. There weren't many people in the entire Myriad Phenomenon Sea who could occupy a spiritual island with an entire realm as their main body, let alone a top spiritual island like Yellow Dragon Island. If they didn't have enough resources, how could Yellow Dragon Realm have such qualifications? Since this person came from Yellow Dragon Realm, he couldn't be underestimated. However, Li didn't understand. What was Yellow Dragon Realm's Gu Chuan doing here? Judging from his attitude, he didn't seem to want to get involved in this battle. Moreover, there were rules on the Myriad Phenomenon Sea. This battlefield belonged to the Three Realms Island and Baiyue Island. Even if Gu Chuan came from Yellow Dragon Realm, he would break the rules if he interfered. When the time came, the Three Realms Island only needed to request for arbitration, and Rizhao of the Myriad Phenomenon Sea would come forward to deal with Gu Chuan. As if he could see Lu Ye's confusion, Gu Chuan continued, "First of all, I'm not here to participate in this battle. Fellow cultivators of the Three Realms Island, please don't misunderstand." As he spoke, he looked at the Three Realms Island. His gaze swept across the 5 Yu-Yao. "May I ask, who is the person in charge?" Wan Xiao and the others all looked at Lu Yi. Gu Chuan looked surprised. According to the information he received, the first island master of the Three Realms Island was a woman called Luan Xiao. He didn't know Luan Xiao, and 2 of the 5 Yu-Yao present were women. Therefore, he wasn't sure who it was. Who would have thought that the person in charge of the Three Realms Island was actually a young man in the early stage of the Yu-Yao realm? Surprise flashed across Gu Chuan's face, and he asked politely, "Fellow cultivator, how should I address you?" Since Gu Chuan was so polite, Lu Yi didn't want to be rude. He replied, "I'm Lu Yi of the Three Realms Island." "Fellow cultivator Lu." Gu Chuan nodded. "It's like this. I've come here on behalf of someone. I want to be a lobbyist. I wonder if fellow cultivator can listen to me?" "A lobbyist?" Lu Ye's eyes flickered. He immediately understood that Gu Chuan was someone invited by Baiyue Island. Otherwise, he wouldn't have barged into the battlefield so abruptly. Lu Yi calmly asked, "May I ask, what position does fellow cultivator Gu take to be a lobbyist?" Gu Chuan smiled. "Of course I'm an outsider." Lu Yi understood. He didn't think that Gu Chuan would lie to him. He nodded and said, "Since you're an outsider, why don't fellow cultivator Gu speak frankly?" In other words, if Gu Chuan was standing on Baiyue Island's side, then he wouldn't need to say anything. Gu Chuan clearly understood the meaning behind Lu Ye's words. He said, "Since that's the case, then I won't waste my breath. Fellow cultivator Lu, Baiyue Island is willing to pay a price as the cost for your island to send troops. We're also willing to maintain a good relationship with the Three Realms Island in the future. Therefore, we'd like to ask fellow cultivator to withdraw your troops." Although Gu Chuan's voice wasn't loud, the Yu-Yao realm cultivators who were constantly paying attention to the situation on the island heard him clearly. They couldn't help but sigh. Baiyue Island clearly didn't have the confidence to defend the central region, so they had no choice but to ask Gu Chuan to be a lobbyist. Yu Huan had operated in the 10,000 Elephant Sea for many years and had a wide network of connections. It wasn't strange for him to know Gu Chuan. This was Baiyue Island showing weakness. Yu Huan wouldn't have made such a decision unless he had no other choice. No matter what, Baiyue Island had lost 800 lunar mansions and several Yu-Yao realm cultivators in the previous battle. Such a loss wasn't small. As long as there was even the slightest possibility, Baiyue Island wouldn't compromise. However, the Three Realms Island's unrelenting attitude made Yu Huan feel uncertain. Moreover, even if they defeated the Three Realms Island this time, Baiyue Island would definitely suffer great losses. Who could guarantee that there wouldn't be other forces eyeing Baiyue Island? When the Sandpiper and Clam fought, the fishermen would naturally benefit. Yu Huan had no choice but to show weakness. At the same time, it was also the only way to preserve Baiyue Island's current strength. As long as the Three Realms Island withdrew their troops, Baiyue Island's cultivators could stay in the central region. After a few days, the Baiyue Galaxy would send people over to replenish their forces. Then, they would be able to stand up again. As for maintaining a good relationship with the Three Realms Island, even a fool wouldn't believe it. It was just empty talk. So many Baiyue Island cultivators had been killed by the Three Realms Island. How could they maintain a good relationship? Yu Huan couldn't say this to Lu Yi personally, so she invited an outsider over. In fact, this kind of thing wasn't rare on the 10,000 Elephant Sea. However, it was Lu Ye's first time encountering such a thing. Generally speaking, those who were invited to negotiate were all powerful existences with extraordinary backgrounds. Gu Chuan undoubtedly had such qualifications. Price. Lu Ye's eyes flashed. What price is Baiyue Island willing to pay? Gu Chuan smiled slightly. Naturally, it's a price that will satisfy fellow Taoist. As he spoke, he sent a voice transmission to Lu Yi with his divine sense. Lu Yi raised his brows. He had to admit that Gu Chuan's price for Baiyue Island was very generous. Of course, this wasn't something that Gu Chuan could decide. Yu Huan must have warned him beforehand. However, Lu Yi wasn't moved by this. After today's battle, the Three Realms Island and Baiyue Island had become complete enemies. There was no way to resolve this grudge. Since that was the case, they could only kill them all. Otherwise, when Baiyue Island recovered, today's battle would have been in vain. Therefore, Lu Yi looked past Gu Chuan and said indifferently, "You want the Three Realms Island to withdraw? Sure. Remove the formation here and I'll naturally withdraw after I kill those two Yu Yaos." End of chapter. Chapter 1741. Yu Huan did not say a word in the center of the formation. He had already given Gu Chuan full authority to handle the peace talks, because he knew that once he interfered, he would definitely get into an argument with the people of the Three-World Island. At that time, the situation would become very bad. He was a patient person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have invited Gu Chuan over at a time like this. However, when he heard Lu Ye's words, he still couldn't hold himself back. He gritted his teeth and shouted, "Wishful thinking." He and Jianghu were the only two Yu Yao left on Baiyue Island. If they died, the thousands of constellations on Baiyue Island would be like a sheet of loose sand. Moreover, Lu Yi actually wanted them to remove the defenses of the central region. If they did that, wouldn't they be putting their necks under the butcher's knife? Wouldn't their lives be in the hands of the enemy? The defenses of the central region were the foundation of their survival. Yu Huan was furious, but his heart was also filled with sorrow. How did things get to this point? 2 months ago, when Baiyue Island was still at its peak, besides him and Jianghu, there was still junior brother Wang, Chu Zhu, Lu Yu, junior sister Meng, and Su Yuming. However, 2 months ago, junior brother Wang had been killed by Lu Yi. Chu Zhu had also been killed at some unknown time. In today's battle, Lu Yu, junior sister Meng, and Su Yuming had died one after another. 5 Yu Yao had died tragically, and 800 constellations had perished. The glory that had lasted for 800 years had been destroyed in a single day. At this moment, Yu Huan was filled with regret for getting involved in Three World Islands affairs. If they hadn't ambushed Tang Jun back then, none of this would have happened. Regret was useless. Now, only anger and grievance remained. As soon as Yu Huan finished speaking, Gu Chuan suddenly turned to look at him. The smile on his face had disappeared, and his expression had turned cold. "Do you want to talk, or should I?" Yu Huan gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. He avoided Lu Ye's gaze. Gu Chuan slowly turned to look at Lu Yi. He smiled again. "I was asked to do this by someone. I also want to complete this matter beautifully. Fellow Taoist Lu, please don't blame me. However, Your suggestion just now was a little too much. Then there's nothing to talk about. Lu Yi slowly shook his head. Let's not jump to conclusions yet. Gu Chuan chuckled. Look, Baiyue Island's side has retreated to the center. Although there isn't much space to move around here, the defensive power of this place cannot be underestimated. Fellow Taoist subordinates have attacked this defensive grand formation before, so you should know how tough it is. The defense of the center isn't any weaker than the defensive grand formation. If fellow Taoist wants to attack it by force, it wouldn't be a wise move. Lu Yi raised his arms and said, I have 1,000 constellations and can form 300 formations. We can attack in batches and take turns. No matter how strong this defense is, it will be broken one day. What about the losses? Gu Chuan asked. Fellow Taoist, have you considered this? The people of Baiyue Island won't just take a beating and not fight back. As the defending side, they have the advantage. Fellow Taoist, you don't want your own cultivators to suffer any casualties, right? Lu Yi said indifferently, this is war. Casualties are inevitable. Be it me or any cultivator of the three realms, we are all prepared to die here. Gu Chuan frowned. He suddenly realized that Lu Yi was very determined to kill them all. He wouldn't be easily swayed by a few words from him. After pondering for a moment, he said, Fellow Taoist, you might not know, but your Three Realms Island has been captured. So what? Lu Yi indeed didn't know about this, because no one had sent him a message to report it. However, he had expected this to happen. There wasn't a single person on Three Realms Island. Only the bewildering formation was in effect. It was just for show. Anyone who attacked it would be able to take it down quickly. Although Three Realms Island and Baiyue Island are both high-grade spiritual islands, in terms of value, Three Realms Island is undoubtedly more valuable. Although the other side has captured Three Realms Island, they haven't had the time to set up defenses on the island. If fellow Taoist leads your troops back now, I believe that with the power of this battle, the other side will definitely flee. Then, fellow Taoist can reclaim Three Realms Island without any effort. However, if you delay for too long and allow the other side to set up their defenses, it'll be hard to say. Lu Yi said indifferently, there are only 1,000 cultivators in the Three Realms. This Baiyue Island is very good. It's enough for the cultivators of the Three Realms to station. Although Three Realms Island is good, it's too spacious to station 1,000 people there. We don't need it. Gu Chuan was speechless. He suddenly realized that this young man was really stubborn. Gu Chuan seemed to want to say something, but Lu Yi interrupted him rudely. Fellow Taoist Gu, there's no need to say anything more. Please retreat. Otherwise, when the battle starts, you'll be splashed with blood. Gu Chuan was from the Yellow Dragon realm. That was why Lu Yi had spoken to him for a while. After all, he still had to make a living on the 10,000 manifestations sea in the future. It wasn't good to offend the people of the Yellow Dragon realm. Now that Lu Yi had made his stance clear, if Gu Chuan really didn't have a stance, he wouldn't continue to pester Lu Yi. Gu Chuan pondered for a moment, then nodded slightly. Then I won't say anything more. Farewell. He cupped his fists and really left just like that. Lu Yi raised his head and looked ahead. His gaze met Yu Huan's, and he said coldly, Yu Huan, you didn't think this day would come when you ambushed the Yu Yao of the Three Realms, did you? Yu Huan gritted her teeth and didn't answer. Lu Yi shouted loudly, although the Three Realms come from a remote and desolate place, we're not people who can be bullied by just anyone. The cultivators of the Three Realms have established themselves on the 10,000 manifestations sea with only one purpose, revenge. As soon as he finished speaking, he commanded, attack. Many Yu Yao who were watching from afar heard Lu Ye's voice. Some couldn't help but laugh, some looked at him with disdain, and some snorted disdainfully. However, everyone knew that Lu Yi wasn't just saying this to Yu Huan. He was also saying this to the Yu Yao who were watching the battle. The Three Realms Island obviously wanted to use this battle to show the world that they weren't easy to bully. If anyone dared to have any ideas about the Three Realms Island in the future, they'd better think about what happened to Baiyue Island. Actually, Lu Yi had been suppressing his anger for a long time. Although he didn't seem to care much about the unparalleled island being taken away, he was actually very angry. He had used the minor constellation palace to create the unparalleled island. Chu Shen had built it for him, but it had been taken away by the Tianyin realm just because it had transformed into a top-grade spiritual island. In fact, Old Tang would have almost died in that battle if Chu Shen hadn't protected him. With the unparalleled island as an example, when he had built the minor constellation palace under the Three Realms island, he had deliberately adjusted the minor constellation palace's power. He was afraid that it would take effect too quickly. In the end, he hadn't adjusted it properly. After the Three Realms island transformed into a top-grade spiritual island, it had been targeted by others. Behind them was the shadow of the Vientiane star system, Rizhao. When the unparalleled island was taken away, Lu Yi hadn't been there. There was nothing he could do. Now that he was in the Vientiane Sea, he couldn't let the same thing happen twice. Why should the spiritual island that he had painstakingly built be taken away by others? Did they think that the Three Realms island was weak? Then he would show them. Whoever dared to extend their claws to the Three Realms island would have their claws chopped off. Today's battle had happened in front of everyone. Tomorrow, the Three Realms island's name would shake the Vientiane Sea. Outside the central area of the Baiyue Island, thousands of cultivators quickly formed 300 formations at Lu Ye's command. Under the protection of the Tiger Shark warships, they advanced a few dozen miles forward. Lu Yi roared, "Yu Huan, I'll give you one last chance. Remove your defenses. I'll only kill the two of you, Yueyao. If you dare to resist, I'll kill everyone on your Baiyue Island." Yu Huan didn't respond. Only the central area took the initiative to launch a counterattack. The Three Realms constellations who had formed a defensive formation immediately stepped forward and blocked the attacks. In the next moment, the offensive formation behind the defensive formations started to show its power. Colorful lights covered the central area, causing the defensive formation there to ripple. Lu Yi only needed one glance to know that the defensive formation here was extremely tough. It was stronger than the island's protective formation. It wouldn't be easy to take it down. However, at this point, there was no way for the enemy to retreat. The Three Realms island wanted to flatten the Baiyue Island. In order to protect themselves, the Baiyue Island wouldn't easily compromise. However, the Three Realms island undoubtedly had the upper hand in this battle. The central area was limited. This led to the most direct problem. The Baiyue cultivators didn't have enough strength to counterattack. This was because most of the formations here were mainly defensive. At first, the Baiyue cultivators relied on the island's protective formation. The defensive line was very long and there was enough space. They could also set up many counterattacks. However, the central area was only so big. The things they could set up were very limited. Not to mention thousands of people, even if there were tens of thousands of people here, only a portion of them could be of use. Of course, if the Baiyue Island really had tens of thousands of people, they didn't need to defend. They could just charge out. Although the second round of battle seemed very intense, it was actually very boring. After fighting for half a day, there wasn't a single casualty on either side. There was no need to talk about the Baiyue Island. As long as the defensive formation wasn't broken, they wouldn't have to worry about their lives. As for the Three Realms Island, just as Lu Yi and Gu Chuan said, 300 formations and 20 Tiger Shark battleships attacked in batches. Furthermore, half of them were used for defense. This allowed the Three Realms Island to have a strong defensive force. Therefore, as long as the cultivators weren't completely exhausted, there wouldn't be any casualties. This was the first time that a battle for a spiritual island broke out after the twin Qi-connected spirit array was released on a large scale. The battle at the unparalleled island didn't count. This was because the defenses of the unparalleled island were too weak. After being attacked by the enemy, the defensive line was destroyed. However, it was different this time. According to the rhythm of previous battles at this time, the attacking side would definitely suffer great losses. This was because the strength of the constellations was limited. When resisting the counterattack from the defending side, there would always be times when their strength was not as strong as they wished. However, the Three Realms Island didn't suffer any casualties. The biggest reason was because of the formations that were in charge of defense. A formation formed by 3 to 5 people couldn't be said to be unbreakable. However, it was very useful in the current battle. A small twin chi-connected spirit array indeed changed the situation of the battle between the cultivators in the Wanxiang Sea. End of this chapter. Chapter 1742. The battle between the two high-grade spiritual islands was in full swing. The spectating cultivators watched the battle attentively and discussed in private. Yu Yao, who was with Brother Wu, said, "The three-world island side was so loud. I thought they had some kind of trump card. If they continue attacking like this, I'm afraid the three-world island will have to return in defeat." Brother Wu nodded and said, "That's right. Although it looks like they're evenly matched on the surface, the Baiyue Island still has the advantage. They can rely on the defensive arrangements on the island and don't expend much of their own energy. On the other hand, the three-world island is exhausting their own energy with every attack. If this continues, the three-world island might not be able to hold on. They're still young and hot-headed." Yu Yao shook her head slowly. "I think that Lu Yi is still young. It's not a bad thing to suffer a loss. He won't be so arrogant in the future." The two Yu Yao weren't the only ones who thought this way. Almost all the spectating cultivators thought the same. For a moment, they felt that the three-world island was in a difficult position. If they had known this would happen, they would have agreed to the other party's conditions when Gu Chuan was present. At the very least, they could have reaped more benefits. The situation was in a stalemate. The three-world island's cultivators might not be able to conquer the Baiyue Island's central region. Instead, their own three-world island had been conquered. The situation was terrible. On the battlefield, Lu Yi and the three-world island's Yu Yao stood side by side. They hadn't made a move during the attack on the central region. The constellations of their own islands were working hard. It wasn't that they didn't want to make a move, but that they had to conserve their strength. "It's about time," Wan Xiao suddenly said. Lu Yi nodded slightly, then turned to look at his side. "Giant armor." The three-world island's Yu Yao wasn't the only one who didn't participate in the battle. Giant armor was as well. No one would have thought that giant armor, who was only at the early stage of the constellation realm, would be the biggest deciding factor in this battle. In order to catch the enemy off guard, Lu Yi had specially instructed giant armor not to reveal a certain ability of his when they attacked the Baiyue Island's protective formation. It was all for this moment. The giant armor stepped forward upon hearing this. At the same time, magic power surged around Lu Ye's body. Fiery red energy spread out in all directions like blazing flames, enveloping a large area. Not only did it envelop the giant armor, but it also enveloped all of the Yu Yao cultivators. As his mana surged, countless complicated yin and yang symbols quickly took shape and merged with each other. In the blink of an eye, a huge and unparalleled spirit pattern was formed. The twin spirit branch formation disk was only suitable for constellations and could not satisfy Yu Yao's needs. However, if Lu Yi constructed the twin spirit branch formation disk herself and maintained it, there would not be much of a problem. Of course, doing this would consume a great deal of his own magic power. Moreover, it was only suitable for certain occasions. For example, at this moment, it was inconvenient to do so in a truly chaotic battle. The 5 Yu Yaos were only responsible for maintaining the flow of magic power and did not take the lead. Zhu Jia roared furiously and the flesh on his body wriggled violently. A violent stream of blood energy charged into the sky and the entire world seemingly took on a blood-red hue, causing the countless spectating cultivators to fall into a daze. In the next instant, everyone was shocked. This was because an incomparably huge formation had suddenly appeared on the battlefield. It was a black tortoise formation. Actually, there were many black tortoise formations on the battlefield. They were all formed by the cultivators of the 3 realms with the help of the twin spirit branch formation disk. It was also these black tortoise formations that blocked the counterattack from the Baiyu's central region. This formation was mainly for defense. However, the black tortoise formation formed by Zhu Jia and the 5 Yu Yao cultivators was clearly very different from the other black tortoise formations. First, it was in terms of size. In comparison, The difference between the newly formed Black Tortoise Formation and the other Black Tortoise formations was like the difference between a grandfather and a grandson. Secondly, it was in terms of texture. The Black Tortoise Formation formed by the constellations appeared to be in the shape of a black tortoise. However, the newly formed Black Tortoise Formation didn't just have a form. It was more like a living creature with flesh and blood. The patterns on its four legs were clear, and even the crisscrossing grooves on its back were vivid. A long time ago, Lu Yi had discovered that the Black Tortoise Array formation led by the giant armor was very different from others. This might have something to do with the giant armor itself. In his early years at the Spirit Stream battlefield, he had obtained something similar to a Yao core. Lu Yi had once guessed that the Yao core was the Yao core of the Black Tortoise. With the giant armor's extraordinary talent, with the help of the Yao core, it was like a tiger that had grown wings. Forming a formation with Xing Su had already revealed the giant armor's strength. Now there were 5 Yu Yao supporting him. The Black Tortoise Formation formed by the Black Tortoise Formation shocked even Lu Yi. Giant armor's roars did not stop. This was not just because it was raising its chi, but also because it was in extreme pain from the immense pressure. His cultivation was ultimately too low. Even if he was at the later stage of the constellation realm, the pressure he would have to endure would be less. However, he was ultimately only at the early stage of the constellation realm. If he wasn't a body cultivator, if he wasn't extraordinarily talented, the pressure of this formation would have instantly killed him. Even so, this state could not be maintained for too long. At most, it would last for 5 breaths. When the giant Black Tortoise Array formation was formed, Yu Huan and Jianghu instantly realized that something was amiss. They were actually not too nervous earlier because the defense of the central region could be sustained. They still had the idea of forcing the three-world island to retreat. However, now that they felt the terrifying might of the giant Black Tortoise Array formation, they were no longer confident. Therefore, Yu Huan did not hesitate at all. With a command, all the counterattacks in the central region were directed at the giant Black Tortoise. The Black Tortoise's body was huge, and its movements seemed slow. It could not dodge the enemy's counterattacks at all. At this moment, another figure appeared out of nowhere. It was 9 Provinces Meng Jie. He stood alone in the middle of hundreds and thousands of cultivators and the giant Black Tortoise. He looked extremely fragile. Then, with a flip of his hand, he took out a golden conch and put it to his mouth to blow. The three-world island had a good relationship with the mermaid tribe. With the help of Lu Ye's Azure Sea Conch, almost all the cultivators of the three-world island had visited the mermaid tribe's territory and entered the Heavenly Conch Hall in batches to try to find opportunities. Some people did not gain anything, while others gained something from it. The conches from the Heavenly Conch Hall had all kinds of strange effects. Some of the conches were not very useful at all, but some could play a miraculous role at critical moments. For example, at this moment, as Meng Jie blew his golden sea conch, the image of a conch suddenly appeared and enveloped him. The sound of the conch did not stop. More and more figures came from Meng Jie's left and right and rushed into the image of the conch. With each additional person, the image of the conch became more solid and bigger. This was the power of Meng Jie's golden sea conch. It could accommodate many cultivators. The more it accommodated, the larger its size and the stronger its defense. It was equivalent to Meng Jie using the power of the golden sea conch to integrate the power of many cultivators and turn it into a defense. Of course, there was a limit to this integration. This was related to Meng Jie's strength. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of cultivators rushed into the image of the conch. The conch that was originally only enveloping Meng Jie had now become extremely huge. The entire conch had become extremely solid, as if it was real. It blocked the Black Tortoise formation behind it. The attacks from the central region were all blocked by the giant conch, causing cracks to appear on the surface of the conch. This sudden turn of events left all the spectating cultivators dumbfounded. Great doubts flashed through their minds. What was that? What was that? Ever since Giant Jia and the 5 Yu Yao of the three-world island formed the Black Tortoise formation together, the development of the situation was incomprehensible. The appearance of the giant conch that followed was unheard of. However, regardless of whether it was the appearance of the giant black tortoise or the conch, it made everyone realize that the Three World Islands attack on the Baiyue was not without a backup plan. These two things were the Three World Islands backup plan. The first round of attacks from the central region of the Baiyue caused the giant conch to tremble violently, causing cracks to appear all over it. When the second round of attacks arrived, the conch completely shattered. The hundreds of Three World cultivators inside all vomited blood and fell in all directions like kites. This was especially true for Mengjia, who had activated the conch's might. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper, and his aura was extremely weak. Although they looked miserable, they had completed their mission. They had helped the black tortoise behind them block the two waves of powerful attacks. Under the lead of Shui Yuan and Hua Ci, the medical cultivators who were already prepared hurriedly rushed forward to rescue the injured cultivators. They quickly began to treat them. At the same time, after the conch shattered, the giant black tortoise that had been blocked by it revealed itself. It had already forced its way to the central region. The giant shadow shrouded over the thousands of cultivators, causing them to be unable to see the slightest bit of light. Kill it. Yu Huan roared angrily. He activated his transcendence energy and attacked the black tortoise. In the central region, power fluctuated unrestrainedly, and concentrated attacks were ready to be launched. At the head of the black tortoise, the surface of the giant shell cracked like a rock. It only lasted for a few breaths of time before it could no longer bear it. Fortunately, at the crucial moment, a light singing voice sounded by its ear. It was a voice that the giant shell had never heard before. When the voice entered its ears, it seemed to contain a mysterious power. As the voice floated in, a layer of green light rippled out from its body. The giant shell only felt the pressure suddenly decrease by a lot. Its physique was also greatly strengthened at this moment. He understood that this was Yen Miao helping him. That mysterious singing voice was a special ability of the mermaid clan. Taking advantage of the fact that the enemy's attack had not completely launched, the giant shell roared angrily and raised its right arm. At the same time, the giant black tortoise's right front claw also quickly raised. Then, it slammed down fiercely. Who said that the black tortoise formation could only defend? Within the protection of the central region, regardless of whether it was Yu Huan, Jianghu, or the many constellations, their eyes reflected this terrifying attack. Their minds were blank, and they only felt the blood in their bodies turn cold. Under this attack, the spiritual island shook. With the point of impact as the epicenter, a visible impact spread out in all directions. Even the cultivators who were watching from a few hundred miles away felt their clothes and hair fluttering in the wind. Today's update. I've been here since the day before. Yesterday, the child was admitted to the hospital. Today, the surgery is at 8 o'clock. After the surgery, the child will definitely cause a ruckus. I'll try my best to guarantee tomorrow's update. End of chapter. Chapter 1743. Outside the battlefield, the corners of almost everyone's eyes twitched as they watched this shocking scene. Their expressions were so absent-minded that they almost thought they were dreaming. The protective barrier of the central area caved in, and the lights suddenly dimmed. The huge impact even caused many cultivators to be thrown off their feet, and they were in an extremely sorry state. Half of the hastily accumulated attacks were not able to be released. Although the remaining half was released, it was still unable to break through the black tortoise formation. What made Yu Huan feel relieved was that the protection of the central area was still there. Although it had weakened a lot after that attack, at least it was not damaged. Therefore, none of the cultivators on their side had died. However, what worried him the most was that this defense definitely wouldn't be able to withstand a second attack. That sort of attack was simply too berserk. It was so berserk that it was unbelievable. That sort of attack was simply not at Yu Yao's level. At the head of the black tortoise, the right arm of the giant tortoise was covered in white bones, with no flesh or blood remaining. He had gathered the power of his body and the 5 Yu Yao to unleash that attack. Even with the help of the formation and Yen Miao's singing, he had paid a huge price in order to unleash such an attack with his early constellation realm body. This was also the reason why Yu Huan felt that the attack was not at the level of Yu Yao. Among the 5 Yu Yao of the Three-World Island, aside from Lu Yi, who was at the early stage of Yu Yao, the others were all at the late stage of Yu Yao. How terrifying was the combined attack of such a powerful force? The fact that Baiyue Island's central defense was able to withstand this attack was all due to the 800 years of accumulation. If it were any other defense that had not been accumulated for long enough, it would have shattered long ago. At the head of the Black Tortoise, even though its right arm was severely injured, giant armor did not stop attacking. This was because it could not maintain the Black Tortoise formation for too long. It had to end the battle quickly. His eyes were scarlet with anger as he raised his left arm. The enormous Black Tortoise's left front claw also rose up, blocking the last bit of light in the Bayou cultivator's eyes. "It's over," Jiang Hong muttered in a daze as he looked at the Black Tortoise's giant claw that was slamming down. Boom! Baiyue Island shook violently for the second time, and an even more violent shockwave spread out in all directions. The spectating cultivators' hearts skipped a beat, and they felt that the attack didn't land on Baiyue Island's central defense, but on their hearts. The situation on the island became extremely chaotic at this moment. The energy was extremely chaotic, making it impossible for people to see the situation on the island. They only saw the huge Black Tortoise array suddenly collapse on its own. Giant armor had already reached his limit. His burly body was dyed red with blood, and his arms had lost flesh, leaving only white bones. His aura was weak as he fell to the ground. Li Baxian's team, who were already prepared, quickly retreated from the battlefield. Without him as the leader, the Black Tortoise formation naturally couldn't be maintained. It was not until 3 breaths later that the cultivators watching from afar could clearly see the situation inside. The defense at the center of Baiyue Island had been broken. Not only did the giant Black Tortoise's claw break through the defense, but it also killed countless Baiyue cultivators. There was a giant claw mark there, and blood and corpses were everywhere. "Kill. Leave no one alive." Wan Xiao clenched her teeth and shouted. Following her order, the cultivators of the Three-World Island charged forward like ferocious tigers. The true decisive battle had begun at this moment. Ever since the cultivators of the Three-World Island attacked, they had broken through 2 layers of the enemy's powerful defenses. They had reached this point with great difficulty, so no one would be lenient. Lu Ye's spiritual sense surged. He suddenly looked forward and called out, "Ma Shangxi." Ma Shangxi was a clever person. When he heard the call, the blood mist around him immediately surged, directly wrapping around Lu Yi. He turned into a streak of blood light and shot forward. In the blink of an eye, he charged out of Baiyue Island and headed towards the depths of the myriad phenomenon sea. There was no other reason, but Yu Huan had actually fled. He must have realized that the defense at the center of the island couldn't withstand the second attack from giant armor, so he fled first. Even Lu Yi didn't expect his decisiveness. Moreover, when the Black Tortoise formation collapsed, Lu Yi was also hit by the backlash, causing him to be unable to stop him immediately. However, he had been paying attention to Yu Huan all along, so he quickly realized his intention to flee. There was no suspense in the outcome of this battle. At the constellation level, everyone's forces were about the same. However, one side's morale was high, while the other side's fighting spirit was gone. The Baiyue cultivators couldn't withstand the subsequent attacks of the Three-World Island. At the Yu Yao level, the Three-World Island had an absolute advantage. Therefore, it was only a matter of time before the cultivators of the Three-World Island took down Baiyue Island. Although Wan Xiao had shouted to leave no one alive, everyone knew that it was impossible to kill all the enemies in such a battlefield. As long as the Baiyue cultivators scattered and fled, some of them would be able to escape alive. The Three-World Island couldn't kill them all. The constellation cultivators could escape, but Lu Yi definitely wouldn't let Yu Yao go. Jiang Yuan's reaction was a little slower. At this moment, he was already entangled with He Baichuan. He was probably doomed to die. If Yu Huan wanted to escape now, he had to get past Lu Yi first. Yu Huan was very fast. Since he was running for his life, he definitely wouldn't hold back. With his late-stage Yu Yao cultivation, Lu Yi obviously couldn't catch up to him. Fortunately, Ma Shangxi was there. Using the blood escape technique, he followed closely behind Yu Huan. The distance between them was shrinking at a speed visible to the naked eye. Sensing the aura behind him, Yu Huan panicked. He knew that if he couldn't shake off the other party this time, he would definitely be in big trouble. He used some kind of spirit talisman and slapped it on his body. His speed suddenly increased a little. However, he soon despaired. Because his speed increased, the pursuers behind him became even faster. Ma Shangxi was furious. Was it easy for him to condense treasured blood? It required a lot of time and effort. Last time, when he brought Lu Yi to save Tang Jun, he had to use a drop of treasured blood to activate the blood escape technique. He thought that he wouldn't need to use it this time, but who knew that he still couldn't escape in the end? He hated Yu Huan to the core. After a short while, the master and servant finally caught up to Yu Huan. Ma Shangxi took the initiative to attack. Under the seal of numerous blood techniques, Yu Huan was finally unable to escape. He had no choice but to fight the two of them. Yu Huan obviously knew that Ma Shangxi's blood techniques were powerful. He had probably heard about it from Chu Zhu, so Ma Shangxi repeatedly tried to use the sea of blood to envelop him, but failed. Although the blood race's blood sea technique was powerful, if the enemy was prepared, it wouldn't be so easy to trap them. Moreover, Yu Huan himself wasn't weak. The three figures fought fiercely, and Yu Huan quickly fell into a disadvantage. After all, he was fighting 1 against 2, and Ma Shangxi was slightly stronger than him. Under such circumstances, it was even more impossible for him to escape. Suddenly, another fierce exchange occurred. Yu Huan suddenly turned around and only defended against Ma Shangxi's attacks. He used the rest of his strength to attack Lu Yi. His thinking was very simple. Only by taking down Lu Yi would he have a chance to live. He wasn't a match for Ma Shangxi, but Lu Yi was an early-stage Yu Yao. How could he not be a match for her? This was the only chance he had to survive. In the exchange just now, he had indeed sensed that Lu Yi was extraordinary. This early-stage Yu Yao was extraordinarily strong, but she was still much weaker than Ma Shangxi. He had to pick the soft persimmon to pinch. Behind him, Ma Shangxi had a strange expression on her face. She couldn't help but sigh. Truly, the sins of the heavens could be forgiven, but the sins of one's own making were the hardest to bear. If Yu Huan had continued to fight like this, he could have lived for a while longer. However, he had set his sights on the Saint Venerable. He was courting death. But then again, anyone in Yu Huan's situation would have made the same choice. Facing Yu Huan's violent attacks, Lu Yi suddenly sheathed her Panshan saber. This action confused Yu Huan, but in the next moment, a feeling of horror rose in his heart. This was because when the saber was unsheathed, Yu Huan felt that he wasn't facing an early-stage Yu Yao, but an ancient vicious beast that had suddenly awakened. When that simple and unadorned saber light slashed out, Yu Huan instinctively wanted to defend himself. His reaction was very fast. If there were no other factors, this saber might not have been able to do much to him. At most, it would have caught him off guard and injured him. The saber slash was very strong, and Lu Ye's foundation was also extraordinary. However, there was still a gap of 2 small realms between their cultivations. It would be very difficult for Lu Yi to kill a late-stage Yu Yao with this saber. Moreover, his control of the sabers might hadn't reached the peak yet. However, in order to take down Lu Yi as quickly as possible, Yu Huan had only defended himself slightly against Ma Shangxi's violent attacks. This was very fatal. A huge force attacked him from behind. Yu Huan felt his internal organs churn. This was Yu Yao's peak attack. Even if it wasn't her most violent attack, it still caused Yu Huan to stagger and see stars. His transcendence energy was in turmoil. At this moment, Lu Ye's saber slashed out diagonally. Blood splattered everywhere. Yu Huan screamed in pain and retreated in panic. From his abdomen to the top of his head, his flesh and blood had been torn apart. It was a horrifying sight. He had almost been cut in half. Fortunately, he had an extraordinary physique. Lu Ye's saber force was endless. It was like a tidal wave, layer upon layer, pressing forward step by step. On the other side, Ma Shangxi didn't show any mercy. She didn't use her blood arts anymore. Instead, she fought Yu Huan in close combat. The master and servant attacked from the front and back. Even though Yu Huan was a late-stage Yu Yao, he was still beaten into a daze. In just a few moments, he was covered in wounds and his life was hanging by a thread. After 3 breaths, Lu Ye's saber stabbed out. Yu Huan's body suddenly stiffened. His expression was one of terror. He lowered his head and looked at his chest. He saw that Lu Ye's saber had already pierced through his heart and through his back. Every beat of his heart caused immense pain. Even such an injury wasn't fatal to a Yu Yao. However, he didn't dare to move. This was because Lu Yi only needed to use a little bit of transcendence energy to destroy his internal organs from the inside. At that time, he would die without a doubt. He slowly raised his head and looked at Lu Yi. He opened his mouth and wanted to beg for mercy. At this moment, he truly regretted his actions. Who would have thought that just following orders to launch a sneak attack on a mid-stage Yu Yao would actually cause such a great calamity to befall Baiwei Island? However, Lu Yi had no intention of listening to him. Transcendence energy surged around him as he prepared to deal the final blow to Yu Huan. At this moment, a voice rang out from afar. "Fellow Taoist, please spare him." Lu Yi frowned. When he turned around, he saw a planetary boat rushing over from the direction of the voice. When it stopped in front of him, a figure was revealed. Today is still the first update. I barely slept last night. End of chapter. Chapter 1744. When he was chasing after Yu Huan with Ma Shangxi, Lu Yi had considered the possibility of another Yu Yao intervening to save Yu Huan's life. This would not break the rules of the Wanxiang Sea, because the moment Yu Huan escaped from Baiwei Island, he was no longer in the battlefield of the Battle of the Spiritual Island. Lu Yi and Ma Shangxi's pursuit of him could be said to be the aftermath of the Battle of the Spiritual Island, or it could be said to be a personal grudge. Hence, if anyone wanted to save his life, they could do so. Yu Huan had been active on the Wanxiang Sea for many years. How could he not have any connections? If he was really willing to pay a price to get someone to save him, it was not impossible. However, what Lu Yi did not expect was that the person who came to save him was not a Yu Yao, but a constellation. As the voice rang out, a star boat hastily flew over. A young man was standing on the star boat. He looked young and his skin was soft and tender. It was obvious that he was in a hurry. When he saw that Yu Huan was still alive, he finally heaved a sigh of relief. He wiped the sweat off his forehead and said, "Fellow Taoist, please hold on. Please show mercy." Lu Ye's Panshan saber was stabbed into Yu Huan's chest. The dermic power on the saber was about to be unleashed. Beside him, Ma Shangxi's 2 balls of blood-red light surged. Her divine sense was also firmly locked onto Yu Huan. The master and servant's powerful deterrence made Yu Huan lose the courage to even move his eyes. He was afraid that he would meet with a mishap in the next moment. "Who are you?" Lu Yi had some guesses in his heart, but he still asked. The young man stood on the planetary boat and smiled. He was not reserved like a constellation in front of Yu Yao. He bowed graciously and said, "My surname is Yuan." Then he looked at Lu Yi meaningfully. Lu Yi thought to himself, as expected. His surname is Yuan, and he came from the island of versatility. He remembered that Tang Jun had mentioned before that he had visited a Sunshine Realm expert called Yuan Du on the island of versatility. He wanted to build a relationship with him, but he did not manage to meet him. He was sent away by a constellation subordinate called Yuan Cheng. That Yuan Cheng was a star constellation cultivator. He was young, but extremely arrogant. When Tang Jun was talking about these things, he was very angry, because Yuan Cheng, this star constellation, had a very bad attitude towards him. At this moment, there was no doubt that this person was Yuan Cheng. He had only reported his surname, not even his name. This was not how he should treat Yu Yao. If he didn't have a powerful backer behind him, he wouldn't have the confidence to speak like this. "What is it?" Lu Yi narrowed his eyes slightly. Yuan Cheng smiled and said, "I've already told you my purpose for coming here. You should have heard it." Lu Yi looked at him expressionlessly. Yuan Cheng wasn't afraid at all. He calmly looked back and said again, Please spare his life, fellow Taoist. Lu Yi said, What if I say no? Yuan Cheng revealed a distressed expression and said earnestly, Fellow Taoist, cultivation is not easy. A cultivator who wants to cultivate to the Yu Yao realm has to go through countless hardships. If he dies because of a moment of rashness, wouldn't it be too sad? What do you think, fellow Taoist? At first glance, his words sounded like he was talking about Yu Huan, but anyone could hear the threat in his words. He was just short of warning Lu Yi not to kill Yu Huan on impulse, lest he end up in a miserable state later. Lu Yi looked at him indifferently and said no more. Seeing that Lu Yi was unmoved, Yuan Cheng couldn't help but frown and say, I believe that fellow Taoist Yu Huan already knows his mistake. If fellow Taoist can spare his life, he will definitely turn over a new leaf. He will also be willing to compensate fellow Taoist. Yu Huan, who had not dared to make a move, quickly said, That's right. If I can keep my life, Baiyue Island will be on good terms with the three-world island in the future. I am also willing to compensate. Before he could finish speaking, he didn't dare to continue because the magic power in Lu Ye's mountain blade began to surge. His face instantly paled, and he felt as if he had stepped into the gates of hell. Fortunately, Lu Yi withdrew his magic power in time. Even so, Yu Huan's entire body went limp. He had never felt so close to death before. Are you here to make peace? Lu Yi looked at Yuan Cheng. Yuan Cheng was stunned for a moment, then nodded and said, I guess so. Lu Ye's expression suddenly turned cold. You think you're worthy? Huang Long's Gu Chuan had tried to persuade him before, but it didn't work. However, with Huang Long's status and Yu Huan's secret request, he was qualified to be the one to persuade him. In comparison, Yuan Cheng's qualifications were far inferior. Moreover, the battle had already reached this stage. How could Lu Yi show mercy just because of Yuan Cheng's words? As soon as he finished speaking, the mountain blade in his hand shook, ready to take Yu Huan's life. Yuan Cheng's expression changed greatly. His spiritual sense rushed out and he sent a voice transmission to Yu Huan, but it was unknown what he said. In the next moment, Yu Huan, who was in despair, instinctively shouted, Yu Huan of Baiyue sincerely requests to be the arbitrator. The magic power on the mountain blade had already begun to erupt. It would end Yu Huan's life in the next moment. However, at this moment, a huge pressure suddenly descended. Lu Yi felt as if the entire world was pressing down on him, making it difficult for him to circulate his magic power. He couldn't kill Yu Huan. Not only him, even Ma Shangxi, who was at the peak of Yu Yao's cultivation level, was suppressed on the spot. She couldn't move, and her expression was difficult. Lu Ye's bones creaked as he jerked his head up. At some point, a figure had appeared in his field of vision, standing on Yuan Cheng's starboat. It was a white-haired old man. He looked dignified without being angry, and there were no traces of magic power fluctuations on his body. However, there was no doubt that the huge pressure came from him. The Rizhao had arrived in person. Under normal circumstances, no matter how fierce the battle on the Wanxiang Sea was, as long as the rules weren't broken, Rizhao wouldn't interfere. This was because they were the ones who set the rules. They couldn't take the initiative to break the rules they set. They also wanted the Wanxiang Sea to prosper. However, if Rizhao of the Wanxiang Sea dared to break the rules they set, then tomorrow, Rizhao of the Wanxiang Sea wouldn't be the only one in the Wanxiang Sea. The Rizhao of other major galaxies could come here at will to protect their own interests. When that time came, how would Rizhao of the Wanxiang Sea control the Wanxiang Sea? Therefore, compared to other foreign forces, Rizhao of the Wanxiang Sea would abide by the rules they set. Only if someone broke the rules would the Rizhao of the Wanxiang Sea have a reason to intervene. Of course, there was another situation just like this one. As the great island master of Baiyue Island, Yu Huan took the initiative to request for Rizhao to be the arbitrator. This way, Rizhao's arrival was justified because it was within the rules. However, it was obviously abnormal for him to come so quickly. This Rizhao arrived almost immediately after Yu Huan requested for arbitration. It was obvious that he had been prepared. It could even be said that he had been hiding nearby, so he showed up as soon as Yu Huan called for him. Yuan Du. Even if Lu Yi used his toes to think, he knew who this Rizhao was. From the looks of it, It was Yuan Du's order for Yuan Cheng to protect Yu Huan's life. However, Lu Yi didn't give Yuan Cheng face, so Yuan Du had to do it himself. Yuan Cheng sent a voice transmission to Yu Huan just now, asking him to request for arbitration. On the starboat, Yuan Du looked at Lu Yi and the battered Yu Huan with a gloomy expression. If possible, he didn't want to show himself. After all, it was Ri Zhao. His arrival would cause too much of a commotion, so he instructed Yuan Cheng to talk to Lu Yi. However, Lu Yi had no intention of compromising. After Ma Bin killed Ri Zhao, he was one of the 3 Ri Zhao that replaced him. He had not been operating in the Wanxiang Sea for a long time. Naturally, there were not many spiritual islands that were interested in him. However, he valued Baiyue Island very much. This was because this island could provide many places for his disciples to cultivate. From the bottom of his heart, he didn't want Baiyue Island to be lost. Previously, when he heard that the 3-world island was attacking Baiyue, he thought that the cultivators of the 3-world island were crazy. He didn't pay much attention to it, because in his opinion, the 3-world island couldn't defeat Baiyue. However, as the war progressed, Yuan Du realized that he had underestimated the 3-world island. Now that Baiyue had been conquered, there was no turning back. However, only Yu Huan couldn't die. He had to protect her. From an outsider's point of view, Yu Huan had submitted to him. If he couldn't even protect Yu Huan's life, then his prestige would be greatly reduced. Which other spiritual island would want to visit him in the future? There were 5 Ri Zhao in the Wanxiang Sea, and he wasn't the only one. Other than him, there were other Ri Zhao that other spiritual islands could visit. Therefore, the reason why he personally came here this time was not because of his deep personal friendship with Yu Huan, but purely because of his own interests. The great Ri Zhao was forced into such a situation. He was naturally furious. If it weren't for the rules, he would have personally taught Lu Yi, this arrogant brat, a lesson. Ancestor. On the starboat, Yuan Cheng bowed respectfully. He looked ashamed. This disciple is useless. Please forgive me. Yuan Du waved his hand and stared at Lu Yi. He smiled faintly. Since this little friend says that you don't have the qualifications, then you can leave. Yuan Cheng pursed his lips and looked at Lu Yi with resentment. It was a dereliction of duty for him to not complete the task given by the ancestor. It didn't matter if this happened once, but if it happened too often, he would definitely lose favor. Yuan Du continued in a cold voice, "Little friend, I wonder if this old master is qualified?" The huge pressure on Lu Yi didn't show any signs of decreasing. His flesh and blood wriggled violently, and his bones creaked. He gritted his teeth and replied, "Guardian Yuan, are you here to persuade me? I don't know what your position is. If I remember correctly, Ri Zhao is not allowed to interfere in the battle of the Wanxiang Sea." Lu Yi gritted his teeth so hard that they almost broke. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. It was obvious that he was under great pressure. "Persuade?" Yuan Du said disdainfully, "Since I'm here, I'm not here to persuade you. Didn't you hear? Someone asked for arbitration, so I'm here to do it. What does the Guardian want to arbitrate? We didn't break any rules in today's battle." Lu Yi gritted his teeth and replied. End of chapter. Chapter 1745. Sunshine arbitration was the best way for the local star system to control the Vientiane Sea. It was also the reason why the Sunshine Guards were stationed at the Vientiane Island. If anything happened on the Vientiane Sea, the Sunshine Guards could intervene in time. However, the Sunshine Guards would only intervene if someone broke the rules. Lu Yi thought about the situation on the 3-world island side and confirmed that they did not break the rules. Everything was within the rules. If that was the case, there was only one possibility left. It's not up to you to decide whether we broke the rules or not. Yuan Du said calmly. With a wave of his hand, Yu Huan, who had been stabbed in the chest by Lu Ye's mountain blade, was taken away by an invisible force. In the blink of an eye, he was standing beside Yuan Du. Yu Huan had escaped from death. He was grateful and grateful. Although he was in a sorry state, he managed to keep his life. He did not have to worry about dying in the next moment. He quickly turned around and bowed. Yu Huan of Baiyue greets Guard Yuan. "Thank you for saving my life." Yuan Du said calmly, I saved you for official business. I was upholding the rules of the Vientiane Sea. There's no need to thank me. Yes. Yu Huan's face was still pale. He nodded repeatedly. He knew that he had said something wrong and did not dare to say anything else. Yuan Du said, "Then tell me, what do you want me to arbitrate? If you can't give me an explanation, I won't let you off so easily. I'm the guardian of the Sunshine Sect, and I have to be fair and just. On the Vientiane Sea, I won't be biased towards anyone." Yu Huan's expression turned serious. He turned to Lu Yi and said angrily, "Guard Yuan, I want you to arbitrate that the Three-World Island did not follow the rules in the Battle of the Spiritual Islands this time." In fact, he did not realize this. During the previous battle, the battlefield was too chaotic. Moreover, the situation on Baiyue Island was not good. Naturally, he did not have the time to pay attention to the special situation. It was not until Yuan Qing sent him a telepathic message. Yuan Qing would definitely not harm him. Therefore, he immediately pointed at Lu Yi confidently and said sternly, "The Three-World Island sent more than 5 Yu Yaos to the Battle of the Spiritual Islands this time." Lu Yi raised his eyebrows. As expected, Yuan Du showed up for this reason. Not just 5. Yuan Du's face sank as he raised his head to look in the direction of Baiyu Island. His gaze was deep as if he could imprint everything there into his eyes. A short while later, he nodded lightly and said, "Indeed, there are 2 Yu Yao here, but there are 4 over there. This is already 6 Yu Yao." He lowered his head and looked at Lu Yi with a dignified gaze as he berated, "Breaking the rules in such a brazen manner is truly preposterous. If everyone acted like all of you, then how could the myriad ocean have any trace of peace? In the future, the 10,000 Elephant Sea will no longer have any rules to speak of. Today, I am investigating the facts. The Three-World Island is unscrupulous and disregarding the rules. They should be punished severely as a warning to others." As he spoke, he slowly raised his palm and slammed it towards Lu Yi. "This guardian will kill you today because you didn't follow the rules. The 10,000 Elephant Sea needs to be fair and just. We guardians will show no mercy to anyone who doesn't follow the rules. If there is a next life, be a good person." Lu Ye's hair instantly stood on end as countless cracks appeared on his body and blood spurted out. When a heavenly illumination master wanted to kill him and acted decisively, it was truly a matter of life and death. Beside Yuan Du, Yu Huan looked at Lu Yi gloatingly. He didn't expect such a turn of events. Sure enough, begging Yuan Du was the wisest decision he had ever made. The Three-World Island didn't break the rules. If the guardian has the word fairness in your heart, then you should let the Three-World Island argue. If the guardian kills me now, then you are silencing me. The Three-World Island won't accept this, and the billions of cultivators in the 10,000 Elephant Sea won't accept this." Lu Yi roared. Yuan Du's brows furrowed as he held back his palm in the end. When he arrived, the commotion was too great. In just a short time, many nearby cultivators came to watch. Although they stood far away, in order to show that he was fair, Yuan Du didn't hide his words. The cultivators in the distance naturally heard him clearly. Now that Lu Yi had shouted, if he really did kill him, it would be the same as killing him to silence him, which would inevitably lead to a lot of suspicions. Moreover, from an outsider's point of view, even if they were being arbitrated, they should indeed argue a little and find out the truth. The 10,000 Elephant Sea was indeed under the jurisdiction of the Heavenly Illumination Masters, but they couldn't do whatever they wanted. The guardians of the Heavenly Illumination Masters had to maintain their own public trust, while the foreign forces had to protect their own interests as much as possible. The entire 10,000 Elephant Sea was in a strange balance. Yuan Du frowned. "What do you want to argue about?" Lu Yi said, "Guardian, please withdraw your aura." When this old thing appeared, his powerful aura turned into an invisible force that suppressed him and Ma Shangxi, which was really annoying. Seeing that Yuan Du was unmoved, Lu Yi sneered. "With the guardian's ability, are you afraid that I, Yu Yao, will run away? Or is it that you don't want me to speak?" With Lu Ye's words, Yuan Du could only withdraw his aura. Of course, he was also confident that Lu Yi couldn't escape from his hands. Only then did Lu Yi feel much better. If you have something to say it quickly. I'm afraid it'll be too late. Don't think you can get away with flowery words. This old man isn't blind. Of course. Lu Yi sneered. Please wait a moment, Guardian. Whether or not my three-world island has violated the rules will be determined. In the direction of Baiyue Island, the sword cultivator's clone was hurrying over. The speed of the sword was very fast, so it wouldn't take long for him to arrive. Although Lu Yi could use the Void Spirit runes to directly teleport the clone over, he didn't want to do so in front of so many people. Yuan Du had sensed 4 Yu Yao's auras on Baiyue Island. Naturally, one of them was the sword cultivator's clone. Lu Yi had been too anxious to chase after Ma Shangxi, so he had left his clone there. As for the 4 treasured blood clones, Lu Yi had already withdrawn them after breaking through Baiyue Island's great protective array. This was because the treasured blood clones couldn't be used too much in battle. Once they were destroyed, Lu Yi would have to reform them again, which was very troublesome. Replenishing the treasured blood clones' energy was much easier than reforming them again. Otherwise, Yuan Du wouldn't have sensed 4 Yu Yao's auras, but 8. In just a moment, the sword cultivator who had rushed over dispersed his sword light and revealed himself. Lu Yi looked at Yuan Du and said, Guardian, you sensed 4 Yu Yao's auras on Baiyue Island. He's one of them, right? That's right. Yuan Du nodded. Then there's no problem. Lu Yi raised his hand and grabbed at the clone. What? Yuan Du was stunned for a moment. Then, a look of disbelief appeared on his face. When Lu Yi reached out and patted the clone, the living Yu Yao seemed to have melted into a ball of red light and merged into Lu Ye's body. Only her clothes and a sword gourd were left. Lu Yi casually put away the clothes and sword gourd. He wasn't worried about exposing the sword gourd. Many cultivators liked to wear this kind of Dharma treasure. Therefore, the sword gourd's camouflage ability was very strong, unless someone observed it. This sudden change shocked Yuan Cheng, who was standing on the star ship. What's going on? Yu Huan was also stunned. Yuan Du was the only one who reacted. A clone technique? Lu Yi looked at Yuan Du mockingly. Guardian Yuan is still the most knowledgeable. Yuan Du was indeed knowledgeable. However, he had never seen such a strange clone before. In his perception, this clone was no different from a living person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have shown himself. This is going to be troublesome. He secretly regretted it. If he had known this would happen, he would have gone to Baiyue Island to observe. Perhaps he could have found some clues. Then, he wouldn't have been in such a difficult situation. This proves that Three-World Island didn't break the rules in this battle of the spiritual islands, right? Guardian Yuan. Yuan Du didn't say anything. What else could he say? Asterisk swoosh. Asterisk Yu Huan reacted quickly. Almost as soon as Lu Yi finished speaking, he began to flee desperately. He had failed to rely on Yuan Du to arbitrate. If Lu Yi wanted to kill him now, no one could save him. Lu Yi only glanced in the direction Yu Huan fled. He didn't chase after him immediately. Instead, he looked at Yuan Du and said, Yu Huan was about to die. It was the guardian who took him away from my blade. Now that the facts are clear, shouldn't you return Yu Huan to me? To show fairness and justice? Yuan Du glared at Lu Yi. He, a Rizhao, had personally appeared and used the Wanxiangxi's rules to arbitrate. In the end, Lu Yi used facts to prove that Three-World Island didn't break the rules. Everyone knew that Yuan Du had made an appearance this time for selfish reasons. This was equivalent to him being slapped in the face by Lu Yi. If that was all, it would be fine. But now, Lu Yi actually wanted him to return Yu Huan, whom he had saved. Wouldn't this mean that after he was slapped in the face, he would be slapped in the face again? However, he had indeed saved Yu Huan from Lu Ye's blade. Now that Lu Yi was using fairness and justice as an excuse, he couldn't deny it. Because he was the one who said fairness and justice, and he had said it more than once. Yuan Du's murderous intent burned. He couldn't wait to kill Lu Yi. However, he was still a Rizhao. It was easy to kill Yu Yao in the early stages, but not after. Once the news of him killing Lu Yi spread, the Wanxiangxi would no longer be peaceful. The Rizhao of the top forces had been coveting the Wanxiangxi for a long time. However, due to the many rules and the strange balance, they couldn't interfere in the affairs of the Wanxiang Sea. If the guardian of the native Rizhao didn't care about the rules, would the Rizhao of the other forces care? He could imagine that if he killed Lu Yi today, there would be 10 Rizhao in the Wanxiang Sea tomorrow. Therefore, no matter how strong the murderous intent in his heart was, he could only forcibly endure it. It had to be said that Rizhao's temperament was very stable. If it were an impulsive cultivator, they might have already attacked. He just stared coldly at Lu Yi, silently threatening him. End of chapter. Chapter 1746. Of course, Lu Yi could see the threat in Yuan Du's eyes, but he was completely unmoved. There was no possibility of a good relationship between the Three-World Island and Yuan Du, not to mention today's incident. Yuan Du's sneak attack on Old Tang was also related to him. It was certain that Baiyue Island belonged to Yuan Du today. The Three-World Island attacked Baiyue Island and offended him. Yuan Du also held a grudge against him and the Three-World Island, so what harm was there in offending them? His eyes met Yuan Du's calmly without flinching. He wasn't worried that Yu Huan would run away. Yu Huan had the power of pyrolite on him, and within a certain range, Lu Yi could control him and take his life at any time. Of course, he couldn't do anything beyond this range. At most, he could use it to locate Yu Huan's position. However, Yu Huan was now seriously injured like a stray dog. Although the 10,000 elephants sea was vast, where could he run to? Today, he would die without a doubt. After a few breaths of silence, Yuan Du's arcane energy suddenly surged. He raised his hand and gently grasped in Yu Huan's direction. In that direction, Yu Huan, who had already fled 1,000 miles away, suddenly seemed to be bound by an invisible force, unable to move. Immediately after, he felt the power suddenly become stronger, and all the bones in his body started to creak. Greatly shocked, he cried out in alarm, "Guardian Yuan, please spare my life." Yuan Du turned a deaf ear to his pleas and coldly stared at Lu Yi, saying in a clear voice, "Baiyue Island's Yu Huan lied and deceived the superiors. Today, this guardian will behead him. I hope that the future generations will remember this lesson. The 10,000 Elephant Sea has its own rules. If anyone dares to violate them, we Sunshine Guardians will not sit idly by." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly clenched his hand. 1,000 miles away, a cloud of blood mist suddenly exploded and Yu Yao's vitality disappeared. Lu Yi raised his brow. He just asked Yuan Du to return the escaped Yu Huan to him. This was a reasonable request. After all, he was the one who rescued Yu Huan from his blade. However, Yuan Du actually killed Yu Huan. Although Yu Huan was seriously injured, he was still a late Yu Yao cultivator. Even though he was thousands of miles away, Yuan Du had crushed him like an ant. Sunshine's power. How terrifying. In fact, what Lu Yi cared about was not Yuan Du's strength, but his actions. He had asked Yuan Du to return Yu Huan with the intention of using the fairness and justice that Yuan Du had repeatedly proclaimed to disgust him. However, Yuan Du had not acted according to his plan. Instead, he had directly killed Yu Huan and took the opportunity to proclaim the rules of the myriad phenomenon sea, unknowingly erasing many things that were unfavorable to him. At least, in the eyes to the outsiders, the Guardians' image. These old fellows were indeed not to be trifled with. Yuan Du was still looking at Lu Yi, his expression unreadable. This protector failed to find out the truth and was almost deceived by a scoundrel today. Fortunately, I did not make a big mistake. Yu Huan has already paid the price for deceiving me. So, are you satisfied? What else could Lu Yi say? He immediately brought his fists together and said, "The Guardian is indeed fair and just. We're all impressed. Don't worry, we'll follow the rules when we're on the 10,000 Creations Ocean. We won't break any rules." "I hope so. Take care." Yuan Du gave him a deep look, then disappeared in a flash. Yuan Qing gave Lu Yi a sinister look, then flew towards the island of 10,000 Elephant on his star boat. After the storm, Lu Yi felt sweat all over his body. Facing such a powerful opponent, Sunshine, was really stressful, especially when he suppressed him with his powerful aura as soon as he appeared, which made his qi and blood flow a little sluggish. The onlookers dispersed one after another. Lu Yi rested for a while, then called Ma Shangxi, "Let's go." Ma Shangxi summoned a cloud of blood mist, wrapped Lu Yi in it, and flew towards Baiyue Island. When Master Lu Yi and his servant returned to Baiyue Island, the battle was over. The cultivators of the three realms were resting. Seeing Lu Yi return, the Yueyao of the island immediately came to greet him. Luan Xiao asked, "What happened?" They had sensed Sunshine's aura from afar, but they couldn't leave, so they didn't know what was going on. It was a false alarm. Let's talk about it later. Lu Ye's divine sense surged, and he checked the situation on Baiyue Island. "How are the casualties?" Luan Xiao replied excitedly, "There are only injuries, no deaths." This was definitely a huge miracle. Looking at all the battles on the island of 10,000 Elephant Sea, even if it was just a battle for a low-grade spiritual island, it was rare for one side to have no casualties, especially when the Three Realms Island was the attacking side. However, thinking back on this battle, everything was going according to Lu Ye's plan. He disguised himself as Chu Zhu and snuck into Baiyue Island, then used the Little Flower Realm to place the 500 cultivators in the 3 formation base halls. These 3 formation base halls were protected by very powerful formations, so even if they were in enemy territory, as long as the formations weren't broken, their lives wouldn't be in danger. Before Baiyue Island's protective formation was breached, very few cultivators of the 3 realms were injured. When the protective formation was breached, the cultivators of the 3 realms gathered their forces to attack the central area. Similarly, there weren't any casualties among the cultivators of the 3 realms. It was only when Giant Armor led the Black Tortoise formation and worked together with the 5 Yuyaos to forcefully break the central area's formation that the cultivators of the 3 realms were in the most danger. At that time, Baiyue Island still had more than 1,000 cultivators, which was slightly more than the 3 Realms Island. If the Baiyue cultivators fought with their lives on the line, the 3 Realms Island would definitely have suffered great losses. However, after the central area's protective formation was breached, Yu Huan, who was the mainstay of the 3 Realms Island, was the first to escape. The Baiyue cultivators were already in a state of panic, and Yu Huan's escape completely caused them to lose their will to fight. When Jianghu was killed, the Baiyue cultivators lost their backbone, and the cultivators of the 3 Realms Island fled in all directions. This created the miracle that no one from the 3 Realms Island died in the battle for the spiritual islands. Injuries were unavoidable. In such an intense battle, no one could guarantee that they would come out unscathed. Fortunately, the accompanying medical cultivators started treating them in time, so there weren't many problems. At that time, the Baiyue cultivators had gathered in the central area of the island. After this battle, more than half of them escaped, and only about 400 people were killed by the 3 Realms Island's cultivators. The 3 Realms Island couldn't do anything about those who escaped. Even though they still had 3 Yuyaos, they couldn't kill all of their enemies in such an environment. After hearing Wan Xiao's report, Lu Yi nodded and said, "Not bad." This battle had completely made the 3 Realms Island famous, and they had perfectly achieved their initial goal. While the Yuyaos of the 3 Realms Island were chatting on Baiyue Island, the cultivators watching from the outside were still immersed in great shock. They had witnessed a battle for a high-class spiritual island with their own eyes, but no one had expected that the battle would develop in such a bizarre way. As the defending side, Baiyue Island not only failed to defend their 800 years of foundation, but even the Yuyaos were killed. Countless cultivators of the 3 Realms Island died in battle, but no one from the 3 Realms Island died. How ridiculous was this? Many of the Yuyaos had witnessed battles for high-class spiritual islands, and they had never imagined that a battle of this scale could have such a bizarre ending. How could the 3 Realms Island be so strong? However, the 3 Realms Island didn't seem strong on the surface. It was normal for them to have 5 Yuyaos, and they didn't have a lot of 1,000 cultivators. Therefore, no one could understand how the 3 Realms Island managed to achieve such a feat. This matter was very strange. They couldn't say that Baiyue Island was cooperating with the 3 Realms Island to put on a show. No force would pay such a huge price to make another force famous. Brother Wu, the latest news is that the 3 Realms Island has been captured. Brother Wu's companion suddenly spoke while holding a musical note. Who did it? Brother Wu was shocked. Giant Blade Island, his companion replied. Brother Wu revealed a look of understanding. Giant Blade Galaxy and Baiyue Galaxy are neighbors, and the cultivators of the two galaxies have always been on good terms. Since Baiyue Island was attacked, Yu Huan must have sent a message to Giant Blade Island to take action. The people of the Three Realms Island are all here, and that place is empty. It's normal for it to be captured. After saying that, he suddenly chuckled. I wonder if Zhao Yunqi still has the guts to stay on the Three Realms Island. Zhao Yunqi was the island master of Giant Blade Island, and he had a close personal relationship with Yu Huan. When the Three Realms Island attacked Baiyue Island, he was happy to intervene and help reduce the pressure on Baiyue Island. However, if news of this spread, it would be hard to say if Zhao Yunqi would still dare to stay on the Three Realms Island. Baiyue Island was so big, but the Three Realms Island had fallen just like that. Giant Blade Island was even weaker than Baiyue Island. Zhao Yunqi would have to weigh whether he could endure the anger of the Three Realms Island's cultivators if he continued to stay on the Three Realms Island. His companion also grinned and gave a thumbs up. Brother Wu is wise. The person who sent me a message said that Giant Blade Island had already begun to build defenses on the Three Realms Island, but now it seems they are preparing to withdraw. That's normal. After today's battle, the Three Realms Island's fame has spread. As long as Zhao Yunqi still has some sense, he would not force himself to stay on the Three Realms Island. He might not even get to eat the lamb and get into trouble. Brother Wu, now that the Three Realms Island has taken over Baiyue Island, they have two high-class spiritual islands. I'm afraid this doesn't conform to the rules. That will depend on how big their appetite is. If their appetite is big enough, they can split up and use their own realm's name to occupy a high-class spiritual island. That wouldn't be considered breaking the rules. Of course, the prerequisite is that their own realm has the strength to occupy a high-class spiritual island. Difficult. I think that the Three Realms Island is also a group of galaxies. They only have 5 Yu Yao and 1,000 constellations. They can barely occupy one high-class spiritual island. They definitely won't be able to occupy two. If they don't have the strength, they will definitely return to the Three Realms Island. This was also a reasonable guess. Relatively speaking, the Three Realms Island's value was undoubtedly higher than Baiyue Island. Because the Three Realms Island was bigger, Brother Wu felt that the people of the Three Realms Island would not give up on their own island. End of chapter. Chapter 1747. The cultivators of the Three Realms would definitely return to the Three Realms Island. This was not just Brother Wu and Brother Yu's speculation. Most of the Yu Yaos thought the same. As long as Yu Yao from the Three World Island was not crazy, she would not continue to stay on the Baiyue Island. So the question was, how should Baiyue Island be dealt with? It had not been easy for them to conquer such a superior spiritual island. They could not possibly throw it away. To be honest, there had never been such a precedent in the Vientiane Sea. Normally, those who had the strength to attack a high-class spiritual island would occupy it after conquering it. Hence, there was no problem of how to deal with it. However, the Three-World Island situation was clearly different. The Three-World Island was still there, and they could retreat at any time. However, Baiyue had been captured by them. This blissful worry was truly enviable. However, Yu Yao soon found out how Three-World Island was going to deal with Baiyue. Because a short moment later, a voice suddenly sounded out from Baiyue Island, I'm Wan Xiaoa, and I'm the Grand Master of the Three-World Island. I sincerely invite fellow Taoists who intend to take over Baiyue Island to ascend the island. In 2 hours, my Three-World Island will be holding an auction to determine the ownership of Baiyue Island. Her voice wasn't loud, but thanks to Yu Yao's peak stage cultivation base, all the spectating cultivators could hear her clearly. Everyone was taken aback at first, but then they revealed a matter-of-fact expression. Auction. Yes, this was indeed a very good idea. The cultivators of the Three-World Island couldn't occupy 2 high-class spiritual islands at the same time, but after spending so much effort to take down Baiyue Island, they couldn't just abandon it. That would be too much of a waste. After all, It was a high-class spiritual island with great value. Therefore, auctioning off the ownership of Baiyu Island was the best and most practical method. This way, the three-world island would not have to face the awkward situation of not being able to occupy two high-class spiritual islands. It would also bring in a large amount of income for the cultivators on the island. Auctioning the ownership of a high-grade spiritual island was something that had never happened on the 10,000 Elephant Sea before. Therefore, when Luan Xiao finished speaking, many Yu Yao revealed looks of interest. Many Yu Yao were even tempted. Among them, there were those from high-class spiritual islands. Naturally, they did not have much interest in Baiyu Island. However, this was a once-in-a-lifetime event. Of course, they were willing to join in the fun and take a look at the novelty. Most of them were Yu Yao who did not come from a high-grade spiritual island. The forces behind them actually had a good foundation. However, it was not easy to attack and occupy a superior spiritual island. This was because the superior spiritual islands in the Vientiane Sea had been in operation for many years. Their defensive power was very strong. It was basically impossible to take them down with the same foundation. Take Four Corner Island for example. The four of them were at the late stage of the Moon Jade realm and had 1,000 constellations. They were barely qualified to occupy a high-class spirit island, but in reality, they could only occupy a middle-class spirit island. They had tried it once before, but in the end, their home was almost stolen. They panicked and hurriedly withdrew their troops. The Four-Way Galaxy was not the only one in the 10,000 manifestations sea that had encountered such a situation. Now that there was an opportunity to occupy a superior spiritual island without shedding a drop of blood, who wouldn't be tempted? Of course, he would have to pay a hefty price. After all, this was an auction for a superior spiritual island. The price was ridiculously low. For a time, a large number of Yu Yao rushed towards Baiyu Island from all directions. This was the first time in the Vientiane Sea that an auction for the ownership of a superior spiritual island was held. Was this against the rules? No one knew. However, because there had never been such a precedent, no Sunshine Protector had ever set any rules for this. On the three-world island side, Luan Xiao and He Baichuan led the way. A few Yu Yao warmly welcomed the Yu Yao who had rushed over after hearing the news. This allowed Luan Xiao to get to know many Yu Yao experts from the various spirit islands. Baiyu Island's conference hall was dilapidated. The aftermath of the previous battle had spread here. Fortunately, it was not completely damaged. 2 hours later, the conference hall was filled with Yu Yao. There were at least 300 people present. These 300 people represented at least 200 different factions. However, no one knew how many of them were here to join in the fun, or how many of them were genuinely interested in bidding for the ownership of Baiyu Island. Luan Xiao was still the host. On the surface, she was still the first island lord of the three-world island. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Luan Xiao smiled slightly and said, "Thank you all for coming." It was not easy for the three-world island to occupy Baiyu Island today. With such a high-class spirit island, the three-world island has suffered great losses. When she said this, the 300 Yu Yao could not help but want to laugh. They had all seen how great the three-world island's losses were. However, since Luan Xiao said this, they could only listen. I don't think I need to explain the value of a high-class spirit island. The three-world island is enough for the cultivators of the three-world island. If the Baiyu Island had not gone overboard and secretly attacked the three-world Yu Yao, we would not have come to cause trouble. Now that we have conquered Baiyu Island, the cultivators of the three-world island do not intend to stay for long. Therefore, we are prepared to auction off the ownership of this island. Someone was impatient and shouted, "Island Lord Luan, let's cut the crap. Just tell us how the auction is going to be held." Luan Xiao looked in the direction of the person who spoke and continued to smile. "All right. Since you are so eager, let's just talk about the rules." She paused for a moment, then said, "Fellow Taoists who are interested in bidding only need to inscribe their price and origins into a jade slip. I will choose the most sincere fellow Taoist. When the time comes, the faction that this fellow Taoist belongs to will obtain the ownership of Baiyu Island." The Yu Yao suddenly understood. This was a secret auction. No one would bid openly. There would be less competition on the surface, which would undoubtedly be more efficient. Moreover, it was obviously very beneficial to the three-world island. This was because no one knew how valuable Baiyu Island was. Something like this had never happened before. However, the factions that truly wanted to take over Baiyu Island would definitely not be stingy with their bids. This was because they only had one chance to bid. They would only have one chance to easily take over a high-class spirit island. This way, the three-world island would be able to obtain the greatest benefits for themselves. After explaining the rules, Luan Xiao said, "Fellow Taoists, you have 5 minutes to discuss. After that, please give me the jade slip with your bids." After she finished speaking, she sat down and waited quietly. In the main hall, divine senses immediately surged. Many Yu Yao took out their musical notes. It was obvious that they wanted to send messages to the factions behind them to ask how they should bid. This was done too hastily. Before the three-world island announced the auction, no one had expected Baiyu Island to be dealt with like this. Hence, no one was prepared. 5 minutes was very short. Hence, if they wanted to take over Baiyu Island, they would have to be very bold. In the main hall, Zhou Chuang and Kong Cheng were also communicating with their divine senses. The Four Directions Galaxies also wanted a high-class spirit island. Baiyu Island was a good choice. This way, they could attract more cultivators from the Four Directions Galaxies to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. However, they were somewhat hesitant about how to bid. If they bid too low, they would definitely not be able to compete with others. If they bid too high, they would not be able to afford it. Just as they were in a dilemma, Zhou Chuang suddenly sensed the movement of the musical note. He hurriedly took it out and his eyes lit up. Kong Cheng sensed something and sent a voice transmission. "What's wrong?" Zhou Chuang smiled slightly. "Fellow Taoist Lu sent a message and asked us to bid any price." Kong Cheng was stunned for a moment. Then, joy appeared on his face. "Fellow Taoist Lu means," Zhou Chuang nodded slightly. Kong Cheng forcefully suppressed the excitement in his heart and could not help but sigh. "We owe him another big favor." Kong Cheng raised his head and looked at the other Yu Yao in the main hall. He could not help but sigh. These people had been busy, but they probably did not expect that their efforts were destined to be in vain. Baiyu Island was going to be renamed Four Directions Island in the future. Senior brother, fellow Taoist Lu probably did this because he did not want to expose the relationship between the Three World Islands and Four Directions Island. If that was not the case, there would be no need for such an auction. After Baiyu Island was taken over, the Three World Islands could have easily notified Four Directions Island to take over. Using such an auction as a cover, no one would think that Four Directions Island and the Three World Islands were related. When the results were out, everyone would only think that Four Directions Island had bid the highest. Giving Baiyu Island to the Four Directions Galaxies was not Lu Ye's last-minute decision. When he first made the plan, he was actually not completely confident that he could take down Baiyu Island. After all, he could not predict the outcome of such a battle. He could only do his best and leave it to fate. Fortunately, the final result was not bad. The Three World Islands cultivators had a shallow foundation in the Wanxiang Sea. Although the mermaid race was their most solid ally, it was not good to expose the mermaid race. Moreover, the mermaid race's population was too small. The Four Directions Galaxies was a natural ally of the Three World Islands. Since that was the case, the better they developed, the better it would be for the Three World Islands. Perhaps they would need the help of Four Directions Island in the future. Therefore, after much consideration, Lu Yi decided to give Baiyu Island to the Four Directions Galaxies. No matter what, the Four Directions Islands had helped him when he was plotting against Baiyu Island. Moreover, the Three World Islands had already gained a lot from this battle. Because Baiyu Island was taken over too suddenly, the Baiyu cultivators were not mentally prepared. After taking over the island, the Three World Islands cultivators directly looted Baiyu Island's treasury. They did not loot a lot of spirit jades and spirit crystals, only about 10 to 20 million of them. However, they did loot countless other resources. After all, this was a spiritual island that had been in business for 800 years. Naturally, there were many good things in the treasury. As for the spirit jades and spirit crystals, this was normal. Cultivators needed spirit jades and spirit crystals to cultivate. Baiyu Island might be a high-grade spiritual island, but it did not have a lot of spirit jades and spirit crystals. After all, Baiyu Island did not have any trade activities. In addition, the storage rings of the dead Baiyu cultivators were also collected. After careful calculation, except for Yu Huan, who was killed by Yuan Du, the other Yu Yao's belongings were all in the hands of the three world islands. There were also the storage rings of more than 1,000 constellations that had died in battle. Just the income from this alone was already a huge amount of wealth. It could be said that this battle had greatly relieved the financial pressure on the three world islands. For a long time in the future, the cultivators of the three world islands would be able to live comfortably and would not have to worry about cultivation resources. End of chapter. Chapter 1748. The time it took for a stick of incense to burn was very short. Regardless of whether the Yu Yao present were fully prepared or not, they still paid the price. Inside the hall, Luan Xiao's voice rang out again. More than 10 cultivators from the three realms walked into the hall and took the jade slips from the Yu Yao's hands. Luan Xiao was in charge of checking and calculating. Of course, she was just going through the motions. A moment later, she raised her head and smiled. Are the friends from Four Corner Island here? Zhou Chuang and Kong Qing hurriedly stood up and acted as if they were unfamiliar with Luan Xiao. They cupped their fists and said, Zhou Chuang of Four Corner Island greets Island Master Luan. Kong Qing greets Island Master Luan. Luan Xiao nodded. Four Corner Island's offer is the most sincere. From today onwards, this island belongs to Four Corner Island. As soon as she finished speaking, many Yu Yao in the hall revealed disappointed expressions. These people really wanted to take over Baiyu Island but missed the opportunity. There were also some who were calm. These people were probably just here to join in the fun. Zhou Chuang and Kong Qing looked delighted. They acted as if they had picked up a great bargain. Luan Xiao spoke again. My friends, the cultivators from the three realms will stay in Baiyu Island for 10 days. During this time, we will do our best to help you construct the island's defenses. At the same time, please prepare the corresponding spiritual jades. When Zhou Chuang heard this, he immediately said gratefully, Thank you very much, Island Master Luan. Previously, he was still a little worried. If the cultivators from Three World Island left immediately, the defenses would not be complete. If someone attacked, Four Corner Island might not be able to defend itself. However, if the cultivators from Three World Island stayed for 10 days, the situation would be different. When the defenses here were complete and their defenses were greatly strengthened, unless the enemy's strength far surpassed that of Four Corner Island, they would not be able to take it down. As for the future, Four Corner Island would have to slowly manage it. The longer the island's protective formation was in operation, the more stable it would be. Hence, as long as Four Corner Island could establish a firm foothold in the early stages, there would not be much of a problem. The cultivators from Three World Island are very thoughtful. Zhou Chuang sighed. The auction of a high-grade spiritual island began without any intense bidding. It started without any warning and ended quietly. It only took a little more than 2 hours. There were many things waiting to be done on Baiyu Island. Furthermore, it had already fallen into the hands of Four Corner Island, so it was naturally inconvenient for Yu Yao to stay any longer. Thus, everyone bid farewell and left. After that, the cultivators of the 4 star systems began to migrate. After receiving Zhou Chuang and Kong Cheng's message, Zhang Tingyi and Gao Zhan led a group of constellations and rushed over. Zhang Tingyi was a Yu Yao from the Grand Heavenly Realm, while Gao Zhan was from the Quiet Moon Realm. The two of them, along with Zhou Chuang and Kong Qing, were the 4 late-stage Yu Yao overseers of the myriad phenomenon Sea. The cultivators of the 3 realms were either recuperating or resting. Many of them were assisting the people from the 4 directions star system in building the defenses of the spiritual islands. It was a bustling scene. Lu Yi was also busy cracking the restriction lock on the storage ring. In the battle on Baiyu Island, the Baiyu side had lost more than 1,000 lunar mansions. Even if each person only had 2 storage rings, that was still more than 2,000 storage rings. Even though it was easy for Lu Yi to crack the restriction lock now, it would still take some time. Fortunately, he was not the only one who was busy. He had 2 helpers. One of them was from the Green Dawn Dao world, and the other was from the Jade Conch Dao world. They had some attainments in the Dao of Spirit Tattoos. Their efficiency in cracking the restriction lock was not as high as Lu Ye's, but they could still be of some help. Wan Xiaoa, Shui Yuan, Hua Si, and Old Tang waited at the side. They took the storage rings that had been cracked, took out the items inside, and sorted them out. Wan Xiaoa was the first island lord. She was in charge of the finances of the 3 Realms Island. After the battle ended, Old Tang came to meet everyone. There was a lot of hustle and bustle. Lu Yi was slightly disappointed. This was because he did not find many resources that were suitable for him from the spoils of war. His current desire for cultivation resources was limited to 2 aspects. One was fire elemental treasures that could provide fuel for his talent tree. The other was items that could improve the quality of his art source. He did find some fire elemental treasures. There were not many of them, but it was better than nothing. As for items that could improve the quality of his art source, there was not a single one. Lu Yi was mentally prepared for this, as treasures that could raise the quality of one's source were often priceless, even in the innumerable phenomenon ocean. The Wanxiang Sea had a large number of constellations, and there were many Yuyao as well. Almost every Yuyao wished to improve the quality of their art source. Naturally, they had a great demand for such treasures. Therefore, if a Yuyao had such an item, they would use it as soon as possible. After all, the earlier they used it, the greater their benefits. Ma Shangxi had obtained a white moon crystal because his art source had already reached its limit. Unless he advanced to the Sunshine Realm, which required faster cultivation efficiency, it would be a waste to improve the quality of his art source. Normally, Yu Yao could only go to the Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce to obtain such treasures. Lu Yi had sent a message to the Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce's manager, Chao Xiang, 2 months ago, asking him to keep an eye out for any Yu Yao. However, there had been no news from him until now. It was clear how rare such treasures were. It wasn't that the Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce hadn't found a single Yu Yao after such a long time. However, there were too many people who needed them. Lu Yi had asked Chao Xiang to keep an eye out for them. Who knew if there were more Yu Yao, and asked the managers of other chambers of commerce to keep an eye out for them. There were bound to be some. Perhaps the Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce had obtained some Yu Yao treasures, but Lu Yi hadn't gotten his turn yet. After busying himself for a few days, he finally managed to break the restrictions on those storage rings. He didn't need to worry about the rest. Wan Xiaoa and Tang Jun would handle it. 10 days passed quickly. Baiyue Island, which had been ravaged by the flames of war, had undergone a great change. It once again looked like a high-class spirit island. Most of the defenses were more or less complete. The Four Corners star system would have to fill in some minor details themselves. With Four Corners Island's current lineup of 4 late-stage Yu Yao and 1,000 constellations, as well as the existing defenses, it would be impossible to take them down unless someone mobilized twice the strength of Four Corners Island. According to the agreement, the cultivators of the 3 realms prepared to evacuate. On the night before they left, Zhou Chuang and the other 3 Yu Yao hosted a banquet to express their sincere gratitude. Everyone from the 3 realms island attended the banquet, and the atmosphere was harmonious. Zhou Chuang went to find Lu Yi alone and asked for a branch from the reincarnation tree. Lu Yi didn't need to guess what it was for. Baiyue Island's environment was much better than the Four Corners Island that the Four Corners star system had previously occupied. Not to mention the difference in quality of the Spirit Island, just the size of the island itself was enough. In the past, Four Corners Island could barely accommodate 1,000 constellations. However, the current Baiyue Island could accommodate at least 2,000 people, or even more. The Four Corners star system naturally wanted to dispatch more cultivators here. This way, not only would it increase the defenses of the Spirit Island, but it would also allow more cultivators from the Four Corners star system to benefit from this place and grow faster. Therefore, Zhou Chuang and the others decided to return to the Four Corners star system as soon as possible. However, the journey was long, and it would take at least a year and a half for a round trip. The next day, Zhou Chuang and the others personally sent the cultivators of the three realms off. The Battle of Baiyue Island shook the entire Wanxiang Sea. This battle had created a few miracles that had never been seen before. First of all, the time it took for the battle to end. In the past, it was normal for battles to last for 10 days to half a month. It was also normal for battles to last for 3 to 5 months. The longest battle for a high-class spirit island had even lasted for several years. However, the Battle of Baiyue Island had only taken a day from the start to the end. In just one day, an old high-class spirit island that had been in operation for 800 years had completely changed owners. If not for the fact that many people had witnessed this scene with their own eyes, no one would have believed it when the news spread. Baiyue Island was not considered a powerful force in the Wanxiang Sea, but it was definitely not weak either. No one knew why such a powerful force could not even withstand a single blow from the Three Realms Island. If the time spent on this battle was shocking, then the losses on both sides were enough to be horrifying. Several cultivators from Baiyue Island had died in the battle. It was a complete annihilation. Even Yu Huan, who had escaped in the end, was personally killed by Guardian Yuandu for breaking the rules. There were more than 1,000 casualties on the Constellation Island. On the other hand, there was not a single casualty on the Three Realms Island. This kind of loss ratio was simply unimaginable. Many Yu Yao who had gone to watch the battle had reviewed the battle that day. Everyone believed that the most important reason why the Three Realms Island had such a glorious battle record was that they had used some unknown method to infiltrate Baiyue Island before the island's protective formation was broken. They had disrupted Baiyue Island's deployment. Up until now, no one understood how the cultivators of the Three Realms Island had managed to do this. Many people searched for the surviving cultivators of Baiyue Island, hoping to get some useful information from them. However, they did not find anything because even the cultivators of Baiyue Island did not know what had happened. They were all on the Spirit Island when the battle suddenly broke out. The more they learned about this battle, the more they felt the terror of the Three Realms Island. On the surface, the 5 Yu Yao and 1,000 constellations of the Three Realms Island appeared to be a standard arrangement. They were not weak, but they were not that strong either. However, all the cultivators who wanted to study this battle knew that what they saw was only the surface. There must be something hidden beneath the deep waters of the Three Realms Island. This was what the Three Realms Island relied on to defeat Baiyue Island in this battle. The Three Realms Island's reputation spread far and wide. This led to a phenomenon. Such a huge high-class spiritual island, which should have been a treasure land that countless forces coveted and fought over, was left empty for more than 10 days. Unexpectedly, no forces dared to enter it. This was the first time in the history of the vast Vientiane Sea that something like this had happened. Needless to say, the top forces had their own high-class spirit islands. It was not good for them to occupy a second one. Forces that were slightly weaker did not dare to do so because they were afraid of the strength of the Three Realms Island. Everyone knew what happened to Baiyue Island. Just because the cultivators of Baiyue Island had secretly ambushed a Yu Yao of the Three Realms, the Three Realms Island had mobilized all their forces and destroyed their base. If anyone dared to occupy the Three Realms Island now, they would definitely fight to the death with the cultivators of the Three Realms. No one was willing to repeat the mistakes of Baiyue Island. Chapter 1749. Actually, not many people paid attention to the retreat of the Three Realms cultivators from Baiyue Island because it was not a big deal. But soon, some news came from the Wanxiang Sea, causing countless people to look at the retreating group. It was because the group was not heading towards the Three Realms Island. 20 Tiger Shark warships led the way, followed by dozens of large planetary ships. They were majestic and filled with murderous intent. It was as if they were going to find someone to cause trouble. Thinking about the previous events, many people suddenly became enlightened. Someone was going to be unlucky. Giant Blade Island. When the Three Realms Island and Baiyue Island were fighting, Giant Blade Island had sent out a group of people. They broke through the great formation of the Three Realms Island when no one was guarding it. They stayed on the island for a short period of time, less than half a day. Because Baiyue Island was defeated too quickly, Giant Blade Island immediately retreated from the Three Realms Island when they heard the news. They were afraid that the Three Realms cultivators would come back and beat them up. Although the Three Realms cultivators turned out in full force at that time, everyone believed that Yu Yao of the Three Realms Island must have known about this. Everyone was curious about how they would deal with this matter. In fact, the Three World Island didn't suffer any real losses. The Giant Blade Island had only come for a stroll and then left. They didn't get any benefits, so the Three World Island could just act as if nothing had happened. But at this moment, seeing the majestic aura of the Three Realms cultivators, some people knew that the Three Realms Island was going to take revenge. Acting as if nothing had happened? Impossible. After 10 days of clamor from the Battle of Baiyue, another clamor began. More and more cultivators who received the news followed the Three Realms fleet and headed towards Giant Blade Island. Everyone was worried. The Three Realms Island turned out in full force at the slightest provocation. They did not care about the safety of their own spiritual island at all. This was a bit inexplicable. In the entire Wanxiang Sea, even those forces that only occupied a middle-grade spiritual island would treat their island as the greatest treasure. After all, this was the foundation of their forces in the Wanxiang Sea. Even if there was a conflict with an enemy, they would definitely leave behind sufficient defensive forces. The Three Realms Island did not care at all. They were not in a hurry to return after such a good place had been empty for more than 10 days. After leaving Baiyue Island, they turned around and charged towards Giant Blade Island. However, no one dared to target the Three World Island. The Three World Island's insane way of doing things left the countless Yu Yao on the 10,000 Elephant Sea dumbfounded and upset. They imagined what they would do if the Three World Island turned out to be their enemy one day. It seemed that other than facing the enemy head-on, all other tricks were useless. Across the entire Wanxiang Sea, everyone had fought in order during the Battle of the Spiritual Islands. However, the Three World Island was like a hothead, waving his fists and messing up the rhythm. On a starship of the Three Realms fleet, Old Tang was telling Lu Yi and the others about the situation on Giant Blade Island. During the attack on Baiyu, Giant Blade Island sent troops to capture Three World Island. Lu Yi and the others did not pay attention to it at that time, nor did they have the time to pay attention to it. However, Tang Jun, who was quite well informed, naturally found out very quickly. After the Battle of Baiyue Island, the cultivators of the Three Realms were not in a hurry to leave. Firstly, they had to assist the Four Galaxies in building their defenses. Secondly, they had to take the opportunity to rest and reorganize. Giant Blade Island was their next target. Tang Jun also took advantage of this time to inquire about the situation on Giant Blade Island. Comparatively speaking, Giant Blade Island was slightly weaker than Baiyu because it was only a middle-grade spiritual island. Its situation was similar to the Four Galaxies, and its overall strength was similar to the Four Galaxies. Therefore, when Yu Huan sent a message to Giant Blade Island's Zhao Yunqi, the other party could not wait to send troops to attack Three World Island. In his opinion, this was an excellent opportunity to occupy a high-grade spiritual island. In the end, he easily occupied it. At that time, Zhao Yunqi was very complacent. He naively thought that Giant Blade Island would soar into the sky from then on. However, this happiness did not last long. The news of Baiyu's collapse came back. He panicked and hurriedly withdrew his troops. During these 10 days, the cultivators on Giant Blade Island felt like years. No one knew what the Three World Island's attitude towards them was. Only today did they receive definite news. In the conference hall of Giant Blade Island, several Yu Yao gathered. Zhao Yunqi's expression was unsightly. Everyone, the Three World Islands people are heading towards us. It seems like they are here to settle the score. Then let's fight with them. A burly body cultivator said with an unconvinced expression. I've heard that the Three World Island strength is similar to ours. If we really fight, we may not lose. Zhao Yunqi looked at this body cultivator speechlessly. He felt a headache coming on. A woman beside him sighed and said slowly, when cultivators fight, They don't fight for strength on the surface. Baiyu Island is very strong. They have 2,000 constellations and have been operating for 800 years. The three-world island took it down just like that. Moreover, there were no casualties. We are not even comparable to Baiyu. How can we resist the three-world island's cultivators who are like wolves and tigers? The body cultivator was unconvinced. Junior sister Yu, why do you have to boost their morale and destroy our own? I heard that the main reason Baiyu lost was because the three-world island's people secretly infiltrated their island. As long as we guard against this and defend our spiritual island, what can the three-world island do to us? The key is their infiltration. That junior sister Yu sighed. Up until now, no one knows how the three-world island's people did it. Therefore, no matter how much we guard against them, we may not be able to guard against them. She paused for a moment and continued. The most important thing is that the three-world island came with the might of their victory over Baiyu. The constellations on the island are all terrified. The constellations were terrified, their fighting spirit and battle strength would be affected. Giant Blade Island could not be defended with just a few Yuyao. Another old man said slowly, the three-world island's infiltration should not be an easy matter. Baiyu was not prepared, that's why they succeeded. If we take more precautions, we should be able to prevent this from happening. This old man is afraid that this group of people will surround us and not attack. This was something that could happen, and it wasn't a good thing for Giant Blade Island. Once they were besieged, Giant Blade Island's people wouldn't be able to enter or leave. Everyone would be in a state of panic, and problems would definitely arise after a long time. Therefore, the three-world island's attack on Giant Blade Island was a great crisis for Giant Blade Island. Zhao Yunqi was extremely regretful. At that time, he had been possessed and had immediately attacked the three-world island after receiving Yu Huan's message. However, who would have thought that the three-world island would be so savage that they could destroy Baiyu just like that? Now that they had provoked them, it would be very difficult to get rid of them. The Yu Yao discussed for a long time but were unable to come up with a suitable plan. Soon, a constellation rushed in and reported with an unsightly expression, "Island Masters, the three-world islands people have arrived." The complexions of Zhao Yunqi and the others changed. They came so quickly. A few silhouettes immediately went out of the hall and flew up into the sky. They looked up and saw that the fleet of the three-world island had arrived dozens of miles away from the island. 20 tiger shark battleships were glaring at the island. Many constellations walked out of the starboats and gathered in groups of 3 to 5. They were ready to attack the Giant Blade Island at any time. Zhao Yunqi felt his scalp tingle. In terms of defensive strength, Giant Blade Island couldn't compare to Baiyu Island. Therefore, he wasn't sure how long his island's protective formation could last if the three-world island attacked. He had heard that the three-world island had an extremely special black tortoise formation. It could combine the power of 5 Yu Yao and unleash a heaven-shaking attack. More than 10 days ago, the protective formation of Baiyu Island's central area had been broken through just like that. Many thoughts flashed through Zhao Yunqi's mind. He had already imagined the worst possible scenario. However, he was glad that the three-world island side had only assumed a strong offensive posture and hadn't really attacked. Zhao Yunqi was a quick-witted person. Therefore, after thinking for a while, he knew that today's matters still needed some time. The other side didn't seem to have any intention of attacking directly. Otherwise, they would have already started fighting. He immediately stepped forward and arrived in front of the protective formation. Looking at the place where the Yu Yao of the three-world island were gathered, he cupped his hands and said, "Giant Blade Island's Zhao Yunqi greets fellow Taoists. May I know who is in charge?" Luan Xiao took a step forward and said coldly, "I am the three-world island's first island master, Luan Xiao." "So it's Island Master Luan. Nice to meet you, nice to meet you." Zhao Yunqi exchanged pleasantries and pretended to be surprised. "May I know how my Giant Blade Island has offended your esteemed island that Island Master Luan would lead troops to surround us?" Luan Xiao looked at him indifferently. "If that's what you want to say, then there's no need to say anything." Zhao Yunqi's expression was a little uncomfortable, but he didn't dare to act out. He coughed lightly and said, "Then it must be because of the matter from 10 days ago. Island Master Luan, I can give your esteemed island an explanation for this matter." Luan Xiao remained silent. Zhao Yunqi said, "It's like this. 10 days ago, a group of bandits wanted to harm my Giant Blade Island. After a fierce battle with my Giant Blade Island's cultivators, they fled. This Zhao led troops in pursuit, but that group of bandits actually rushed into your esteemed island to hide. This Zhao had no choice but to charge in and exterminate them, and that's it." It had to be said that Zhao Yunqi's ability to lie through his teeth was quite impressive. His story was very convincing and there was no trace of falsehood on his face. However, anyone could see that he had lost his momentum. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given such an explanation. As a fellow Yu Yao, Zhao Yunqi didn't want to lower himself. However, Three World Island's side had come with a great victory over Baiyu. Not to mention the star mansions of his own island, even he, as a Yu Yao, was afraid. He couldn't guarantee that Three World Island wouldn't be able to take down Giant Blade Island. Therefore, no matter what, he had to avoid this battle today. It wasn't easy for Giant Blade Galaxy to occupy a mid-grade spirit island in the 10,000 Elephant Sea. If he lost it, he would be the sinner of the entire galaxy. So that's how it is? Just as Zhao Yunqi was on tenterhooks, Luan Xiao leisurely replied, "But how come I heard that fellow Taoist Zhao led people to attack my three-world formation and broke in? A bunch of nonsense." Zhao Yunqi vehemently denied, "This is purely false. Our Giant Blade Island's cultivators only focus on developing ourselves on the 10,000 Elephant Sea. We never have any disputes or conflicts with any other forces. This is something that everyone knows." End of chapter. Chapter 1750. So it's just a misunderstanding? Luan Xiao looked at Zhao Yunqi indifferently. Zhao Yunqi said resolutely, "It must be a misunderstanding." Luan Xiao's expression relaxed a little. "That's for the best." Zhao Yunqi couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Judging from Luan Xiao's words, the other party didn't seem to have any intention of tangling with them. Moreover, since they didn't start a fight as soon as they arrived, today's battle could be avoided. Just as he was thinking this, he heard Luan Xiao change the topic. Although it's a misunderstanding, it's a fact that the Three World Island's protective formation was broken. Moreover, many treasures on the island were lost. The corner of Zhao Yunqi's eyes twitched. He knew that things weren't so simple. It turned out that they were waiting for him here. The Three World Island didn't have a bullshit protective formation. It was just a simple maze formation. At that time, the Giant Blade cultivators easily broke it. Moreover, there couldn't be any treasures on the island because they didn't find anything valuable on the island. Zhao Yunqi's heart was bleeding. He knew that he would have to spend money to avoid disaster today. Otherwise, the other party would definitely not let this matter go. Thinking about it, the other party came out in full force and came aggressively. It was impossible for them to say a few words without feeling pain. Moreover, the Giant Blade cultivators did indeed attack the Three World Island. After pondering for a moment, Zhao Yunqi nodded and said, "The situation was urgent at that time. We had no choice. The Giant Blade cultivators are willing to compensate for your island's losses." Luan Xiao looked at him with satisfaction. Fellow Taoist Zhao is indeed a sensible person. Zhao Yunqi's heart was filled with bitterness. He knew that if he wasn't a sensible person, a battle between the Giant Blade cultivators and the Three World Island would definitely be unavoidable. This was something he urgently needed to avoid. Zhao Yunqi carefully glanced at Luan Xiao and asked, "I wonder how much the protective formation and the lost treasures of your island are worth?" Luan Xiao said, "On the way here, I made a rough estimate. Let's say it's 20 million spirit jades." Zhao Yunqi felt as if his liver was hurting. 20 million spirit jades wasn't a small amount. Three World Island didn't have that many spirit jades from Baiyu's treasury. Giant Blade Island couldn't compare to Baiyu, so they definitely couldn't take out that many spirit jades. The big and small forces on the Wanxiang Sea couldn't have too many spare spiritual jades. Firstly, it wasn't safe. Secondly, The cost of cultivation was high. For a spiritual island like the Giant Blade Island, which didn't have many trading activities, there were very few channels to earn spiritual jades. Most of the spirit jades they used were provided by the local star system, and a small portion was obtained through their own means. Only a small number of spiritual islands with trading activities would have a large reserve of spiritual jades. Luan Xiao had expected this, so she added, "If you don't have spirit jades, you can exchange them for other resources of the same value." Zhao Yunqi still wanted to bargain. "Fellow Taoist Luan," Luan Xiao interrupted him with a cold look in her eyes. 20 million. I don't want any more, and I don't want any less. Your island has half a day to prepare. This was obviously the final ultimatum. In other words, if the Giant Blade Island dared to bargain, or if they couldn't gather 20 million worth of resources in half a day, the three-world island would definitely not be polite. Zhao Yunqi was annoyed, but he didn't dare to flare up. After a long silence, he nodded and said, "Fine. Island Master Luan, please wait a moment. I'll go back and prepare." A huge loss. He had only broken a worthless, bewildering formation, and in the end, he had to pay 20 million spiritual jades. Moreover, there was no room for negotiation. Zhao Yunqi was sullen and angry, but he couldn't flare up. He turned around and entered the Giant Blade Island. Obviously, he was going to discuss with the other Yu Yaos on the island. On the star boat, Luan Xiao returned. He Baichuan asked, "Senior sister, do you think they'll be willing to pay?" "I don't know." Luan Xiao shook her head. 20 million spiritual jades wasn't a small amount, but for an entire galaxy, it wasn't too much. If the Giant Blade Island was willing to swallow their anger, they would most likely be willing to pay. After all, the three-world island's attack on Baiyu was only 10 days ago. Giant Blade Island shouldn't want to start a war with the three-world island at this time. "It doesn't matter if they don't pay. We'll just have to fight again." He Baichuan was high-spirited. "This Giant Blade Island is clearly in cahoots with Baiyu. Since we've offended them today, we might as well go all the way." Luan Xiao shook her head. "It's meaningless to fight with the Giant Blade Island. Let's not talk about whether we can take it down. Even if we can, we won't be able to take down a mid-grade spiritual island." This was different from starting a war with Baiyu. Starting a war with Baiyu was the three-world islands' way of showing their strength to the outside world. At the same time, it was also a counterattack. Although this war had started abruptly and ended quickly, it had actually taken 2 months from the preparation to the start of the war. That was why everything went smoothly. If they were to attack the Giant Blade Island now, they wouldn't have so much time to prepare. A mid-grade spiritual island's defense wasn't weak. Even if the three-world island could take it down, they would have to pay a certain price. As Luan Xiao said, even if the Giant Blade Island was taken down, the three-world island wouldn't be able to take it down. When the three-world island's cultivators retreated, it would only benefit others. Baiyu Island was a high-grade spiritual island. The ownership rights could be auctioned off. Many forces would be interested. The Giant Blade Island wouldn't be that attractive. Rather than that, they might as well take the benefits without bloodshed. When He Baichuan heard this, he also felt that it was reasonable. He praised, "Our third island master is the one who strategizes." From the start of the war with Baiyu to today's attack on the Giant Blade Island, it was all Lu Ye's plan in the dark. Luan Xiao was only the one in charge on the surface. Now that he thought about it, since 2 months ago, when Lu Yi ordered the three-world island's cultivators to retreat from the island and hide in the Huang Snail Palace, he probably already expected today's scene when he used the maze formation to cover the island. Using a worthless maze formation in exchange for 20 million spiritual jades worth of cultivation resources. This deal was a huge profit. As expected, the Giant Blade Island didn't have the courage to go to war with the three-world island. Zhao Yunqi returned 4 hours later with many storage rings. Some of them were spiritual jades. There weren't many, only 8 to 9 million spiritual jades. The rest were all kinds of resources. When put together, the value definitely exceeded 20 million spiritual jades. Luan Xiao took them and didn't carefully count them. She chatted with Zhao Yunqi for a while and waved her lily-white hand. The three world islands cultivators who were watching covetously boarded their ships. The fleet set off in the direction of the three-world island. When the spectators saw this scene from afar, they couldn't help but feel disappointed. Those who wanted to watch the show didn't mind the matter blowing up. Those who had nothing to do naturally hoped that the two sides would fight. However, the result didn't go as they wished. Although they didn't know what agreement the two islands had reached, the scene of Zhao Yunqi handing over a lot of storage rings to Luan Xiao was seen by some people. They immediately understood that the giant Blade Island was spending money to avoid disaster. It was a very wise move, although it was despised. Since there was no more show to watch, the spectators quickly dispersed. The three-world island, such a huge spiritual island, was completely empty. There wasn't even a shadow of a person. If it was in the past, this would definitely be impossible. If no one defended such a treasure land, it was destined to be fought over by all the major powers. However, with the battle of the three-world island against the Bayou, no one dared to do so. Because even if they forcibly occupied the three-world island, it was unknown whether the hastily built defenses could withstand the wild attacks of the three-world island's cultivators. The people of the three-world island were crazy. If it wasn't necessary, no one was willing to provoke such a group of lunatics. After the three-world island's cultivators returned, the empty spiritual island gained some liveliness. However, because the three-world island was too big, the entire spiritual island still seemed somewhat empty. The island's protective formation needed to be rearranged. There were also many defenses that needed to be rebuilt. In a short period of time, the three-world island's cultivators wouldn't be able to settle down. However, everyone was in high spirits and full of hope for the future. Lu Yi didn't participate in these trivial matters. After returning to the three-world island, he immediately entered a state of cultivation. His previous encounter with Yuan Du had made him feel a sense of crisis. Although on the 10,000 Elephant Sea, the native Rizhao had to follow the rules set by him, and Yuan Du was even forced to personally kill Yu Huan to protect the fairness and justice that he preached, who could guarantee that these Rizhao would always follow the rules. They were the ones who set the rules. If they forcefully broke them, there might be trouble in the future. However, the people who faced Rizhao at that time would have been doomed. Yuan Du was willing to kill Yu Huan because he had weighed the pros and cons. He felt that it was more important to uphold the rules of the Wanxiang Sea than to forcefully protect Yu Huan's life. If there came a day when something forced the native Rizhao to forcefully break the rules he set, the Wanxiang Sea would no longer have any order. In this vast cultivation world, strength was the most important thing. Lu Yi felt that he had to increase his cultivation as soon as possible. At the very least, he had to reach the late stage of Yu Yao. Only then would he be able to barely survive against Rizhao. The Wanxiang Sea was a treasure land, but it was also full of hidden dangers. Fortunately, cultivation was his forte. As long as he had enough talent tree fuel, the Wanxiang Sea, a cultivation place that belonged solely to him, would be able to play an endless role. In the past, he had to control the speed of his cultivation because he was worried that his foundation would be unstable. However, now that he had reached the peak of the constellation realm and had given birth to the flower of the body, he had an extremely solid foundation. With the rainbow lotus nourishing his spirit and spirit were two strong pillars supporting him. Therefore, the speed of his qi improvement didn't affect him too much. As for the Yu Yao realm, it was the cultivation of qi. Among the spoils of war obtained from Baiyue Island and Giant Blade Island, there were some fire-type treasures. Lu Yi swallowed all of them. In addition to the treasures he obtained from the Jade Conch realm, his talent tree fuel reserves were quite abundant. Of course, cultivating in the depths of the Wanxiang Sea consumed a lot of energy. When he was cultivating in the Wanxiang Sea, Lu Yi left a talent tree clone to guard the three-world island. It didn't participate in the specific matters, mainly to make it convenient for outsiders to contact him. If anything happened, others wouldn't be able to inform him. In the blink of an eye, 2 months had passed. The aftermath of the battle at Baiyue Island had long disappeared. It had only become a topic of conversation among cultivators. The change of ownership of a high-class spiritual island was not a small matter. However, for the vast Wanxiang Sea, it was just a small wave. When the wave passed, it was over. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.